predictions. During the run of Sunkissed, there were many times where I'd do the intro and then forget to record, and so it became a little bit of a joke on the channel.
I know that pain when I became the producer for the Roll20 shows. The first couple, I just like wasn't in the rhythm of like locally recording the thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, I guess it's Twitch VOD ripping time. I like go back to the Twitch VOD on the D&B channel and just like pull it down.
There was a moment during the beginning of Sunkissed on episode number 3 where I turned off the VODs, so it didn't save the VODs.
Oh no.
Because, well, I wanted people to go to the YouTube, because, you know, like, the YouTube is another place where I want to grow and have people see my stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really like Twitch VODs, in general.
Well, I mean, if you're not using Twitch for VODs in general, but, like, it's a good place to, like, if you forget to record, you can just pull off of them.
Well, that's the thing, is I lost episode number 3 and I turned my Twitch VODs back on.
Yeah,
it was
definitely.
Have you ever had it where you stop the recording and it freezes and corrupts the recording, like before it stops it?
No,
okay.
I haven't.
Yeah,
but I haven't used it very much. Like, to be honest, it's more like, oh no, an emergency mistake. I have to fix it, you know?
Yeah. Hello everyone to the Bar Brawl with DistractedElf. We're going to be talking about TTRPGs and roleplay and all these type of things. We may talk about Roll20 quite a bit. It sounds like
we may.
Well, the purpose. I had actually had to divert my brain from saying porpoise for some reason, but the purpose,
the porpoise, yeah,
the porpoise
I got you.
of this show is essentially like just to bring people on in the Twitch show TTRPG roleplay sphere and talk about them. I and also do a tier list, because why not? But
also tier list, yes, of course.
Yeah. So why don't we start off with what's probably going to take up the next 3 or 4 hours.
Alright.
What have you done on Twitch and TTRPGs and shows, etc.?
So, my history extends in the TTRPG space, particularly on Twitch, extends back quite a ways.
Well,
I've been in the space for like 8 years, I want to say, maybe slightly more.
Yeah.
I was doing my streams off of my channel. The first thing that I did was like I ran Pathfinder stuff off of my own channel, and what I would do is I would just get like people who were in my chat who wanted to play Pathfinder or whatever, and like we had two weekly games, and then I had a game that was like teach people Pathfinder, which was like a sign up, like play a game one shot and like learn a little bit of the game thing. So it was like 3-ish sessions a week.
It's like a teaching thing, almost.
Well, like, yeah, one of them was, but it was just like trying to get it's engagement, right? It's like traction. If people think or know that they get to play sometimes, then they don't just like watch. They're more likely to tune in. At least they were back then.
Yeah.
But this was back when like Roleplay was doing their like first campaign in terms of like timeline, like historical timeline. Like I was kind of like slightly before that and during that like thing.
Yeah.
You know. So I did a bunch of Pathfinder, and it was really fun. It was really good, and I think the VODs are still like up on my YouTube somewhere if you want to watch an 8-year-old me not 8-year-old, but like 8
years ago
me do it. And then we started doing stuff like a little bit of, we had some like Vampire Dark Ages. I did some Only War. Like we were basically playing like I was playing a game a week, or not a game a week, a game a day almost for like a little while, and you burn out real fast when you play that much TTRPG. But the thing was that like I'd come from sort of a streaming space of being like a MOBA playing person, so it's like
Okay.
League of Legends, and Dawngate, and so forth, like that kind of stuff. The other thing is I want to mention that all of this stuff was like pre-transition or during transition. I'm trans.
Yeah.
And this was all pre-transition or during transition. So there's some very awkward, like quote unquote adolescent elf awkwardness in some of those shows. Highly humorous if you're into that. And I'm not embarrassed by it at all. But you know, it just kind of is what it is.
Yeah.
That's how it was back then. But yeah, it's all on my YouTube channel. It's ancient, and I haven't curated any of it, so you might be there might be episodes missing or whatever, but it's up there. You know, if you wanna see it.
So archaeologists, it's time to go digging.
So I ran the Pathfinder campaign that was like the big thing, and there were two groups, and they were running together in the same world in different places.
Yeah.
And one of them was in like a big prison complex that they'd been thrown into in like a post-apocalyptic desert wasteland, basically. And like it was about like surviving in this place that had no rules, basically. And then the other one was like a cityscape in the same world. And you know, you'd hear about one or the other in either show, and that was kind of the gimmick. I believe eventually one of the campaigns ended by them going into a den of kobolds and being killed by like a million traps. That's what I remember one of them ending as. But in the same way that like Pathfinder is about, like, all the characters were like some way ridiculous, you know, like in some way overpowered or in some way like crazy good at something. There's a couple of little tidbits I remember. Like I started the campaign off with a museum heist. They were like stealing something from a museum, and that was just like my in media res like starting point. And one of the players, the barbarian, jumped out a window at one point that was like 50 stories above the ground or something like that, and almost plummeted to their death because they didn't know how to actually activate the flying carpet they were holding onto. They didn't know the activation way. Okay. They were just like, it's a flying carpet, and then they like jumped out the window. I'm like, do you know how to turn it on?
I'll figure it out on the way down.
Just plummeting to their death. Yeah.
Was there like an activation word or something?
There was that they could have learned, but they didn't make it.
Oh, Lord.
And that was the kind of game that I ran. You know what I mean? Like, I've always been a big fan of that death is like a thing that happens in TTRPGs generally. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the TTRPG, but I don't like to shy away from what the rules necessarily tell me to do when you do a thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm also a big believer in that D&D role-playing is a separate game to D&D battle board stuff.
Yeah.
Once you're on the battle board, I assume you are going to be playing the tactical board game that is D&D. You know what I mean? And then the role-playing is great. I love role-playing, like role-playing in 5e, in 30, like whatever. It's fun. It's fun and wonderful, and you should have like a good character, and they should feel compelling, and you know, like have a reason for the stuff they're doing, but like that is slightly separate from the battle game.
Yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh, I
do not like player behavior that screws over other players for the sake of quote unquote role play.
Well, I think the PvP, especially just in friendly private games, I think isn't that needed unless both players are interested in it, and that. I mean,
I'm not necessarily talking about PvP. I'm talking about choosing to not act or casting inefficiently or not defending your healer, or you know what I mean, like these things that people do because my character's mad at you, or like whatever, like the things that like if I'm playing to CR, you're gonna die if you do this. You know what I mean? Like just generally. So I like to keep those two things at a little bit of a distance.
Yeah, that's
just because of the way I like to play the game.
That's fair. I do actually, because one of the things I was going to mention earlier when you were talking about your kind of history and the 8+ years that you've been, I do remember you from Henley days.
Oh man, yeah, old school.
Yeah,
Big old school.
Because I think you were in Cyberpunk with, I believe, was it Peachy and Fuzzy and a few others?
I was in a Cyberpunk, a Shadow. It was a
Shadowrun.
Was it a Shadowrun game? I think I've played like Shadowrun is one of those games I have like vague memories of, but I've never played a campaign that's lasted more than like 3 games. You know what I mean? So if there was one with Henley, maybe it's just like out of my brain now.
Because I was in some of the Henley games too as like a GM and player.
I definitely did several things with Henley. I remember like they would hit me up at you know, like the 11th hour or whatever, asking if I wanted to be part of X or Y.
Hey Henley, you crazy Australian bastard! I love you, dude, but you would last minute so much stuff. Did you?
It's fine. Henley's good. Yeah, I remember.
He's a beautiful, beautiful man. But
do you remember a username from the ancient days, Chucky? Do you remember Chucky? It's 616.
I don't think so.
Because I did some stuff with him too, and it was like back then it felt like we were doing some like really, really high profile stuff. You know, it was like me. Yeah. It was like me and Brad, like Brad Wodo, Chucky, Cavalier Guest, and somebody else. I'm totally forgetting who it's really. Maybe it's Peachy. Might have been Peachy. I don't remember.
Peachy manages to get himself in a lot of things randomly.
But like back then it felt like such a big deal. But like nowadays it's like the quality of TTRPG shows is like catapulted into the stratosphere.
Oh yeah.
You know, like wasn't that also with Koibu? It might have been Koibu. Yeah, it might have been Koibu, okay. Chucky, Brad Wodo, and Cavalier Guest, and me. I think that was it. Or it might have been Maggie. It might have been Maggie actually. I think it was Maggie. No, it was definitely Maggie. Yeah.
Like I have a thing to lead into that, but because we got brought up Brad, and I know you've been in shows with him and stuff. Have you ever had
me and Brad have done plenty of stuff together. Yeah.
Like, have you ever been GM'd by him when he's doing like D&D and that? Because
yes, I have. I played in I think one of Brad's like first campaigns actually. The dark realm or whatever it was, where it was
Dark Mist maybe.
I don't remember what it was, but I played in like one of the very early Brad campaigns before Table Story was a thing.
Yeah, well, it was just because like from what I've seen and from what I've heard, like not only has he come like leaps and bounds, but also like he's really good D&D GM apparently.
Brad is fantastic. I highly recommend him. I would say that he fills a certain niche in the community that like not everybody's going to appreciate, but that I had a good time when we played together. Honestly, I haven't done anything with any of the Table Story folks for a little while. I think I think maybe Wax Steven didn't appreciate some of my style, and that was just like the end of it.
I watched Wax Harry Potter show, and I'm kind of a Harry Potter fan, like not really the books and stuff, but just there's I guess the best way to say it is there's promise in the setting, even though it wasn't utilized very well in the books.
I see what you're saying. Sure.
Yeah. And watching Whack do Harry Potter is like magical. I assume you know Zacodicus.
Yeah, of course.
Zacodicus is amazing. Like I've said it a few times, Zacodicus is amazing in that show.
There are a lot of people who I would consider to be like RPG. What would you call it? Like RPG underdogs, but they're just like there all the time, like doing good shit. Like every time they show up, they're super cool, and you're just like, why doesn't this person have like 1,000 people following them around? You know? I don't understand.
I will say, like, if Zacodicus is at a show, I'll automatically be like, okay, I'm gonna watch some of this just to see what it is, because I've been trying to get Zacodicus on. Don't you worry. He's come in at some point.
There are a lot of people that I did games with who are just like not around doing games anymore. I mean, I thought you were one of those people. Like, it's been a little while.
Oh yeah. it took me quite a while to decide to change from like PC gaming to TTRPGs. Like I was GMing and I was occasionally in shows and stuff, but it was very isolated and kind of like
I remember.
insular.
I think we met playing like a game of Talisman with Brad.
Yes,
like
that was when I was doing board games with
like,
Bearded Bros.
Yeah.
with Henley and Peachy, like we did the table
exactly
board game and stuff.
That was the other stuff Henley would invite me to at random.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Henley, that kind of stuff.
Henley had a way about him of just being unashamedly able to hit people up and be like.
I mean, but like that's like so important.
Oh no, that's
to be honest.
You gotta have.
You gotta have the reach. You gotta be able to like be like, hey friend, do you want to do a thing?
Yeah.
Because you never know when you're gonna get a yes, right? Like on like random stuff. I've been trying to like do that a little bit more myself recently, but it's
it can be,
I feel like
if you have anxiety about this type of thing, it can be very difficult. I'm very bad at it.
I feel like I've been around a long time, but I'm swimming in a space where like I've interacted with people who are like top tier, quote unquote, in the TTRPG space.
Yeah.
Numbers wise or viewership wise or whatever, but like that I've never been that person, so I don't.
Yeah.
Like the clout that I possess is not at that level, if you know what I mean. Like I've been kind of steady for like 8 years.
Yeah.
The numbers haven't changed at all.
Well, like when I had Brad on the Bar Brawl, I felt like dirty because I'm getting this person who's on Table Story and gets a whole load of numbers and stuff, and I'm like exploiting my knowing of him to bring him on here, and it's just one of those things where like I can't help my anxiety for that type of shit, so
I totally understand.
Yeah,
I do.
Oh, sorry. I had a question from earlier, which we got.
Yeah, please circle back around.
I sidetracked us. It was my fault. But because you've been in for quite a while,
yeah.
How do you feel about the like, I guess the shift from the early days of like Twitch TTRPGs, and I'm talking about like in general here, so I don't know if this is what you experienced or not, but it used to be all about the like crunch and the mechanics mostly, and I find nowadays I see shows and I've come up with ideas myself where I'm like, I'm not even sure we need rolling in this show in this like, game.
I think to a certain degree that's not a change in the tabletop the Twitch streaming space, but it's a change in the tabletop space in general, right?
Yeah,
like,
yes, that's fair.
Like a decade ago when 3rd was like still good and like, or like Pathfinder was still good, and like 4th was like not super popular, so there was like a lot of that like 4E Pathfinder kind of like bleed through. Those are the games that people knew and that they played, and now there's like a much larger reach for like indie games and for other games and so forth. Like the reason that D&D has the market share that it does is because it's the biggest name, right? Like it's not because 5e is a good system to play your slice of life games with, because it's not, right? Like
I'm not a fan of 5e
I would
myself.
I would not do that. I love 5e, but I love it for the thing that it does, not for
absolutely
the other stuff. Like I think there are a lot of opportunities for games that are narrative to create cool story. Like if you've ever played, like, I don't know, one of the ones that always comes up for me when I'm like, I really want to just like make a neat story with some friends is Fall of Magic.
Okay.
I don't know if you played Fall of Magic. It's a GM-less game. And there's like a map, and the map has a bunch of prompts on it, and you just pick a name from the list and a prompt of that name. So it'd be like the Golem or the Raven or the Guard or the like whatever, like the Fox, like these kind of like prompts, and then a name, and then you follow the map and you follow the prompts. So it'll be like you go to a place and the place will be like you meet on a bridge, and then you do like a scene about the bridge and like why you're there and like what's going on, and there's really no rolling to be done basically. But it is a story of the magic is being is dying basically, and you're gonna travel to the end of the world to figure out what to do about that.
Okay.
And I've played it about like 6 or 7 times now, and it has never been the same. The map is exactly the same, but because you got 4 people making stories about what's happening, you know, like here and now, it's never the same, and it just creates like a really nice little like narrative game that you can play either for 20 hours or for 2, you know what I mean, depending on how like deep you want to get.
Okay.
So yeah, I highly recommend if you get an opportunity.
That
almost give it a go.
That almost feels like a I don't want to say halfway house, but maybe like a 3/4 ways house from like TTRPGs and board games, like in between.
I mean, it is a tabletop game, but it's a tabletop game in the sense of like we are going to imagine things more than the sense of we are going to roll dice, right?
Well, because there's board games which get like Dread, maybe you might consider a board game.
Sure.
The one with the Jenga tower, which I think, you know,
but
is cool.
to like circle back around again, I would say that it is not a change in the Twitch space, but a change in the gaming space.
Yes,
honestly,
that's fair.
And that just like generally, games have become a much bigger thing due to the amount of like stuff that is happening in the space. You know, like the tabletop community on Twitch is a big deal. The tabletop community on YouTube or like podcasts or whatever, it's a big deal in introducing people to the idea that there may be more games than just the Dungeons and Dragons book they got from their uncle
more
or whatever.
Ways to play it as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess I should like introduce myself properly, just in case there are people out there who like don't know who I am and I'm just rambling about stuff. Hi, I'm
DistractedElf.
I'm DistractedElf. You may know me, or maybe you don't, from being on the Roll20 channel for like 4 or 5 years now, and from other TTRPG exploits that I have had in the space. I'm also a variety streamer, just generally, and I stream a lot of things, and I've been doing it full time for like
some miniature stuff.
Yeah, like 9 years. Yeah, recently some miniature stuff. I'm hoping to be able to run a Necromunda game or something on stream.
Oh, do you know what I want to do? And this isn't a secret, so I don't care giving away this idea. I want to build a basic Necromunda system and run it as a TTRPG.
Yeah, I mean, I think
that would be really fun.
There's always what do you call it, like space for individual characterized gang warfare, right? Yeah. Like, I think that's the thing. Chat says every TTRPG streamer seems to be a variety streamer. I say that merely for simplicity's sake. I was a like MOBA streamer. I played League of Legends. I played Dawngate for 2 years. I was like one of their top streamers. I had like an advert on their launcher and everything before they got shut down by EA. And then from there it was just like, what the hell do I do? So now I play whatever. You know, like there's a more complicated history, but I don't want to get into it like too deeply, I guess, unless that's the topic at hand.
I think individual game Twitch streamers tend to fall into it while being variety streamers, and they find one.
Well, you find a game that really like. I mean, people would have called me an XCOM 2 streamer for a little while. I swear I played it for like 6 months.
I was a Blood Bowl 2 streamer for a while.
Yeah, same. Yeah. I also did that. Yeah.
Man, that destroyed my channel. That was fun.
I mean, can you destroy something really?
Yeah.
In the end,
yeah.
Is it possible?
Oh, definitely. Like after I diverged away from Blood Bowl 2, I like lost my passion. I lost my enthusiasm.
To be fair, Blood Bowl 2 is a game that siphons your soul slowly through your nose.
Yeah,
so I mean,
but
I have sufficed myself to playing a game a week.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Oh, and talk about your miniature stuff, because we have a little market of that round here, because I do 40,000 layers with Tashnar, which is 40K miniature painting and lore talk at the same time.
So I've been getting into just like trying to bring some of my hobby stuff because I've been really enjoying. Sorry, hiccups.
Yeah, no.
I've been really enjoying painting and assembling minis and so forth, like as a thing that I just do in my idle time as like a. I haven't really played very much of any of the games, but I really like the minis, you know, and I started getting back into it by going like I'm gonna one day when all this pandemic stuff is over, I'm gonna set up a table and I'm gonna play D&D and I'm gonna stream it from my house, you know, like with my like roommate and my partner and some friends, and we're gonna do that. And I want to do that, and I've tried to do it before, but we didn't really have the environment for it when I did it the last time. I think I could try again and do it well. But so I got a bunch of like D&D minis from like 3D printing places, you know what I mean? Like like Gray Ghost miniatures on Etsy was my like go-to in case you're interested. But so it was like disparate random adventurer stuff, and then eventually, of course, all of that leads back into like, let's get a box of Warhammer dudes, you know, and then it's like, well, let's get more Warhammer dudes. Why not, you know? I have a stream every Monday now where we do miniature related stuff. Like we've painted a big dragon from the Dark Souls board game, the Calamite the Black Dragon. We painted them. We've done a bunch of stuff for my Necromunda gang, who are like Corvus Cabal with bits from like the Escher sets or the Gene Stealer cult sets to give them like guns and stuff.
I love the Eschers. That's so cool.
Yeah, these guys are like a Nurgle cult who are gonna be a Chaos Helot cult. Nurgle.
Okay.
It's gonna be fun. The Corvus Cabal are great. They're like Crow-masky, fun guys. We made our witch this last week for that gang from a mini that's like not a Warhammer mini, but we just like decided to use it anyway.
Yeah.
And what else? Yeah, I've just been kind of like trying to keep up on like a hobby where I get to make things with my hands and feel as if I have created something, because I think recently my biggest problem has been that I just feel anxious about everything all the time. Like I've had some trouble streaming recently because it's just like pressing that going live button just like gets my fucking anxiety up like mad, and I want to try and get it back under control, but it feels nice to like make stuff and say like, this is finished and I like it and it's pretty and I put it in my display case and I'm happy about it. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's it's like a good feeling, you know?
So for me, something I haven't experienced since I stopped doing gaming live streams is that feeling of like, I don't know what to play today, you know, like what game should I go with, you know, like there's some new releases, there's some old classics, you know, what should I go with? And then you're like, okay, screw it, I'm going with XCOM, I'm going Blood Bowl 2, whatever, like let's do it. And you hit go live, and the second you hit go live, your brain is like, shit, I don't want to. I don't want to stream today. I just want to hit stop streaming right now, and it's like 5 seconds in.
The other thing is that I have like this. Me and my partner have been playing Neverwinter Nights on a persistent Neverwinter Nights server, called the Prisoners of the Mist, Ravenloft, and it's like a third E basically, because Neverwinter Nights is like third E. Ravenloft setting, like role playing server basically, and there's like 100-ish people on it at any given time. It's like a small MMO, you know. And recently they've told me that I'm not allowed to stream it, and that makes me sad. It makes me sad because they're like, there's like metagaming issues and you know, like sharing of information. People don't want to be like streamed while they're like doing this stuff and whatever, and it's like, I did it for a whole year before you got mad about it, but okay, sure. Like now you're, you know, and I think there's a lot of like small community politics involved where like one or two people were upset about it, who had clout and just made a big deal out of it. But I'd want to be able to stream that because I've been doing more of that again recently, but I can't. So it's a little frustrating.
And additionally to like any links you want to post or anything, just chuck them in the chat, or
Oh, sure.
or ask Mark to go and find them, because Mark will go and find these things without.
I just,
like,
you
even
know,
without being
it looks
asked.
like, well, it looks like Mark has found the, you know, the Insta for some mini pics.
Also found making your Necromunda beeps.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna happen.
You know, I got VODs. They're out there.
For those of you watching on YouTube, these links will go into the description. So if you want to be
wonderful.
checking out all of Elf's stuff, it's going to be there. Sorry, I just needed to interject.
What else? Like, I don't know. I think streaming is a weird profession, and I honestly would not recommend it to anyone.
No. So, Elf, if have you had real life friends who know you stream coming to you during the lockdown and everything, and being like, "What should I do to start live streaming on Twitch?"
So I've had that both from real life friends,
me too.
and from people on Twitter, and I, as a member of the like trans community, especially like earlier on. Nowadays, I'm like an ancient withered crone by comparison with a lot of the trans folks out there who are like still repping the brand, quote unquote. But I get a lot of like, how do I start doing streaming and stuff? And my biggest piece of advice for anyone who wants to stream, and I've been doing this full time for like 9 years, is show up, be consistent, do it. You can't be a streamer without pressing go live, and no matter what advice I give you, if you don't do that, you won't be a streamer, and that won't happen.
I have a small extra bit to that, which is sit down with yourself and decide what you're doing this for and what your goal is and what you want. Because at the end of the day, like, I think the reason a lot of streamers start and stop and burn out and all these kind of things is they don't decide why they're doing it. They just hope that it's all going to work out fine if they just, if they just do it. And
I mean, honestly, my advice is pretty ironic given my current schedule of not showing up. but you know what I mean.
I find a lot of
people get sick and they work on it, and I'm just trying to like be aware that that's what it is, you know.
Yeah, I find like I find a lot of the more successful Twitch live streamers, especially nowadays with it being so kind of waterlogged with content creators and everything. It is essentially the ones that succeed approach it like a job. So they'll play games they don't particularly like. Obviously they won't say that, but they'll figure out what they need to do to keep growing and to keep getting.
I mean, I definitely think there's a lot of things you can do, and like the algorithm, if you can predict the algorithm and do your charting and so forth. But
lucky,
that's nice. Like, well, sure, but like also like I've never done that, so I can't speak on it. You know what I mean? Like that's not how I've ever conducted myself. I've just been doing what I do, and that's it. TTRPG wise, I've been incredibly I would say lucky. You know what I mean? Like generally, I mean sometimes my inclusion has been a diversity hire, quote unquote. But like I'll take that and run with it if you you know what I mean? Like if I get a position.
Hey, if Critical Role needs more like chubby white dudes, then I'll be a diversity hire.
Hell yeah, sheepy.
I'm not even a massive fan of Critical Role.
I would put out there that there's a lot of opportunity in this space if you make something that is good and fun. I don't think that there's a lot of space for what I'd want to do. Because I like grimdark stuff. You know what I mean? I like going to really awful places with my roleplay, and sometimes those awful places are heartfelt and sometimes they are not. But like I think the general consensus is that like funny and charming is gonna get you the eyes more than
Yeah.
the opposite.
Well, on that, and no pressure for this, because obviously this is live, and I'm not looking to put you on the spot or make you agree to something.
Sure.
I have an idea for I want to do run a Friday slot, which is with the specific goal of being like innovative or experimental or whatever. So if you ever have like a grim
Well,
dark,
let's put it out there, Sheepy,
yeah.
that if your idea of having such a thing ever becomes a real, not an idea, but a thing you're doing, then I will consider being involved.
Yeah.
Let's put it out. That's what I'll say. All right. I don't want to say anything
fair,
else.
That's fair. That's fair.
But I'm not going to help you with the idea, but I will.
Oh,
if
no,
it's
no.
not if it's not an idea, do a thing.
The idea itself already has a few people signed up, and I'm running the first one, which I can tell you about off camera, because I'm not telling these these scrubs
cool.
anything.
Yeah. keep your secrets, Sheepy.
But no, it's no, I'm not telling you. Just sit down. But yeah, no, it's I know what you mean. Like, it's partially I think it's just
look. I will just say that there are many people who have come to me and said, I have an idea that X or Y. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's neat. When it's not an idea, and it's the thing you want me to do, and you're gonna organize that I don't have to organize. I'm into it because I have done so much of that stuff.
It would be a you GM'd thing and me show running.
I got you.
So, yeah. Okay, I don't know how I'd be at running a grimdark. I think I'd be bad at running a properly grimdark. Like,
you really need the right players, because like
yes.
it is a very selective process. If you want a certain tone, you need to know who can play the tone and who has lines and veils that align with the tone.
Yes.
And who is going to want to do that every week. You know what I mean? It's like there's a lot of like people selection involved in TTRPGs in general.
Yeah.
But when you're talking like generally like it's a D&D campaign, that's different than like I want to play this niche indie game that there isn't a big audience for, but I need people who will like actually read the rules and figure out how to play, so that we can actually play the game with some degree of like efficacy together.
Yeah, there's definitely for me at least in my like vision on TTRPG shows, there's this very kind of like, you need to sit down with your players and all agree on what the goal is and what the vision is of a show.
You should, because otherwise you're not gonna. If you don't have a unified vision, then it's not good.
Yeah. Sorry, I just.
The other thing that I would say is like me personally, and I'm just like kind of talking broadly.
Yeah.
If you're playing a game and you've dedicated to the idea of being on a show about that game and living in that world for quote unquote however many episodes. Let's say you're playing a 12 episode series or whatever.
Yeah.
If by episode 5 you don't know how to play your character, I am side-eyeing the shit out of you.
Yeah.
I need people to know what they're doing.
So
it's one of my biggest pet peeves is a fucking 8-hour turn.
It's not exactly on the same like topic, but it's similar, I guess. I won't like name names, but I was on something at one point in my life. I'm gonna keep it as vague as possible, where there was a player who quite legitimately had no character. I think the depth of their character was that they liked coffee.
Nice.
And that was it. So there were multiple instances where like the GM would kind of put a situation in front of our characters, and everyone would be like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna do this," and the other character would be like, "I'm gonna put on the coffee." If that, like, it was very much kind of like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know.
That's not exactly what I'm talking about.
No, I realize that as but
what I'm saying is, like, if you haven't read the rules enough to know how to play your character, and you know that you're going to be playing this game for several weeks,
yes,
then you are not doing the job you are probably being paid to do. Because TTRPG shows generally these days pay. You know what I mean? Like, if it's I'm saying generally because it's like the high profile ones.
Yes,
you know what I mean? Like, or the ones that have budget. At the very least, it'll be like a tip sharing thing. You know what I mean? Like, generally, like if there are tips during the show, then those tips will be split between the cast members, so forth, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, all channels have the channels that kind of run it as a
like. I have literally no problem with how you want to play your game if you're not going to stream it as a thing. But if somebody has brought you on to do a show, then you should learn how to do the show.
Yeah. Like
you wouldn't not read your lines if you were going to do a stage play and then just like make stuff up. Like, it's the same. Like, knowing how the rules work means you know what you can and can't do, and you can think about it as things unfold, right? Like, you should know the rules.
Okay, we won't name names or anything. Have you ever been on a show where someone played a video game, like in their downtime or etc.?
I've been on a lot of shows where people were obviously distracted,
me too.
or it's 8 episodes in and they still don't know how to attack. That's just like, fact of the matter is there are people out there who want to be in the TTRPG space and they're interested in they're like into the idea, but when they start doing it, they don't engage with it. Do you know what I mean? And that's just like, it's okay. You know who those people are after a certain amount of time.
It's very hard to play like League of Legends on the sly when you're on a TTRPG show, because the second the GM goes, "And what do you do?" You're like, "Get out of the jungle." Wait, what? Sorry.
Yeah, and you know what? Like, I will admit to being distracted on several occasions.
Yes.
Like,
It
myself.
happens to everyone.
You know? I will happily say that has been me on occasion.
Yeah.
But usually that's because the game is moving at such a pace that there is nothing for me to do. You know what I mean? Like, it's a domino effect where, like, when one person drags it down, the other people start to like drag it down too. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, it can be a domino.
and on a show that's bad. You know, like you want the show to be interesting.
Yeah.
And, I'll say it again. If you're on a TTRPG show or even in a TTRPG offline, learn the rules.
Yeah.
Figure out how to play the game that you're playing.
I will say, however, just because it's me and I have a tendency to sheepify some rules and systems and stuff. Like,
listen, Sheepy, if you bring me into a game and you say, I've changed all the rules, I go, sweet, that's your problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If I can't read a book about it, that's your problem. Yeah.
Well, that's what I was gonna say is like,
my
when I change things, I don't expect people to keep up with the changes I've made. I will make it my job to tell them what they need to know and what they don't need to know.
I've said it 100 times as a GM, especially for 5e recently, because I've been doing I GM'd Rime of the Frost Maiden or on Roll20's stuff. So I did like on the D&D channel, I did the Rime of the Frost Maiden campaign.
Yeah.
And one of my preeminent rules when it comes to 5e or like games that are easily accessible in terms of their rule sets, but have like a broad amount of stuff that you can or cannot know. You know what I mean? Like, because there's a lot of reading to do, right? My absolute rule number 1 is, if I'm the GM, I will care about everything, all of it, except your characters. I don't know what you do. You know what you do.
Yeah.
I'm not going to look up what your spells do. You're going to know what your spells do, and you're going to tell me what they do when you cast them. Or whatever. Like, whatever abilities you have, that's on you to know. I will contend with the rest of the world. Okay, like all the NPCs and all the other stuff, that's fine, but your character's on you. And I feel like sometimes people still don't know what to do. You know?
Yeah, I would say with things like Dark Heresy and Rogue Trader and the kind of like those type of like really crunchy systems, when you forget like a talent or something like that, it's understandable, especially if you've never done the system before, because
but also like the only thing you have to care about is your character, so you should know what those talents do, right? Like I'm not saying you won't forget or you won't make a mistake. To err is human, you know what I mean? But like it is on you to tell me that is a thing that is happening.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
It
is not on me to remember that you have evasion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's on you.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there's also, that's something I learned the hard way through doing 40k shows, because I started to realize there were times when players would never bother to learn the system because they could rely on me to tell them what they have and what things do. And I was like, there was a point where I was like, I need to dial back the nanny.
To that point, you're just playing games with yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, if I'm like, I know what your character does, and you should be doing this, and you're gonna move here and shoot your gun, and that's how you do it, and this is how you roll the dice, then I'm basically just playing a game on my own with you going like, yeah, cool, awesome, I did that.
Yeah, that's very true.
Oh.
Most of it was like, don't forget that don't forget your sandwiches when you go to school. It's like, don't forget.
Sure.
Don't forget you have 2 dodges.
And I'm getting into like ranty territory, but I can get going on this stuff like very, very easily. And I'm not targeting it at anyone in particular. It's just like the way that I enjoy my TTRPGs.
Oh yeah. And like, I would say, blanket statement, although this is also just wrong as a statement, but blanket statement, however you play your TTRPGs is right. Because well, just purely because as long as everyone at the table is happy with how it's being played.
Sure. Okay. The way you play it is right is different than if everybody enjoys it, then it's fine.
Yeah, sorry.
You know what I mean?
What I meant is, however your group has agreed to play and plays the thing, is essentially, if you want to play a 40k system set in I don't know, just randomly set in the Avatar, The Last Airbender universe, and like all the rules are different and it's all custom and weird and no one would understand it. As long as you guys are enjoying it and everyone's happy with it, that's fine. Like,
sure, I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's a game.
Yeah.
Games are fun.
But
they're supposed to be fun.
At the same time, if you have your own preferences and your own like things you don't like happening and doing and things like that, or if you get into a game where like you lay out how the system's going to be and the fact that you're going to have to know your own character stuff and everything, like, don't sign up to something like that if you're not going to do it, because it's very frustrating when someone's like, okay, so this is your character, you need to know the rules, go and learn them, and then you turn up and you're like, what's a bolter?
Oh no. The other thing I didn't mention in my intro, I guess, is that I'm a LARPer.
Yes, I did know that.
I've been LARPing for 5 years, maybe a little bit more.
Yeah.
And LARP games are an interesting beast when it comes to like the RPG community in general, and I really enjoy them because there is a massive difference between inhabiting a character fully and saying what they do.
Yeah.
Like the LARP vibe, which I think can be really helpful for tabletop, is like being able to be your character and then also separate that character as like a thing you are acting.
Yes.
Like I think a lot of D&D tables don't discuss the ideas of bleed very well. I don't know if you're familiar with the concept, Sheepy. Yeah. Whereas at LARP, it's like a huge deal because it is like very personal, like eye to eye role playing. You know, like I have had people within inches of my face, like screaming at me. You know what I mean? Just like we're having like the most kick down, drag out, like role playing fight you could ask for. And then at the end of game, we're like hugging it out, being like, "That was awesome." You know what I mean? Like, and like the idea of that separation is super important to me because I love exploring difficult stories.
Yeah.
You know, I love exploring tragedy. I love exploring curses. I love exploring like doomed romances. You know, I love all of this kind of stuff that like at a table can get really dirty.
Yeah.
You know, like and it can make you feel a way. You know.
If you get too connected to what's happening and what's going on, it does kind of limit the things that you can explore and the themes.
Well, and something I would recommend to every tabletop gaming player that my LARP stuff has taught me is that like role playing aftercare is an important part of an important part of the journey, right? Like being bloody rivals with the rogue in the party because they stole your family heirloom during the first session, but you didn't know about it in character, but out of character you do know about it, so you're feeling bitter about it, but like, and they've sold it, and now like the bad guy has it, and that's like a prop, you know, and knowing all of that stuff and role playing it, and then after the game being like either talking about that drama, maybe like thanking the person, you know, like creating a rapport with them for like creating a story or like story being created, you know what I mean? Like, even if it's not story that necessarily like works for your character, you're not them, right? You're just the actor acting.
Yeah.
You know, like you're not Jim the fighter, you're Steve the gamer, you know what I mean, or whatever. And the separation between the two is something that like I think changes mediocre roleplay into really good roleplay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because anybody can be like, I swing my sword and I kill that Kenku rogue or whatever, but like getting into how you would feel about a thing is like a whole other, like, or not how you would feel, but how your character would feel about a thing, you know, like it's like a whole nother level of stuff that like I think I mostly got from doing like LARP stuff, because looking someone in the eye and staring at them like you're going to kill them isn't, you know what I mean? Like trying to like convey threat through just like standing in a dark shaded wood and ambushing someone in the dead of night, which I've done.
In LARP, yes.
In
okay,
LARP,
cool.
I play, to give you some context, the character I've played the most is like a wild elven witch, basically. So she's like a wood elf. But like a wood elf in the sense that she consorts with demons.
Like a Warhammer wood elf, where they're kind of dicks.
well, they're definitely dicks, and also she consorts with demons. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like taking people's hearts and using them in demonic rituals was the thing I did.
Yeah.
So like, me and my goons, because I had other players who played wild elves who were like my friends.
Yeah.
Now out of game we're all friends, but in game I'm the boss, you know, and like that's how it is. Would come into conflicts a lot because like our character's belief system is like very deeply rooted in the character, right? Like I'm not playing elf being a wild elf, you know. I'm like trying to be the wild elf. And then after game coming to you and saying like, man, I'm super sorry that your character died in that dark ritual that we did, but it was cool, and like thank you for being a part of it, you know. And sometimes people are responsive and sometimes they're not. Sometimes you get to like hug it out, and sometimes you got to give it a little while, you know. And like there are hurt feelings and stuff, but like that aftercare, that like checking in with people, that like making sure that the role play that you've engaged in was in good faith, that you making sure that they know that you appreciate them as like a part of the story, making sure that they know that you're not being malicious on purpose, and just like, and if it comes to it, working it out of character as to how you can resolve it.
Yes.
Right? Like it is okay to plan things. It's okay to be like well, I didn't really like that, and I really hope that like in the future our characters can be friends. So like, how can I do that?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if you bring her tribute, she's more likely to like you. So like, find something you think will be like worthwhile to her, bring it to her, and we can bury the hatchet. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just plan that, and then next session we do that. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
I would say like additionally, going off what you said, the aftercare is so important because otherwise things fester. If you bring you
don't want to leave that stuff in the air, right? Like you don't want them to be thinking about you all week, going like, man, I hate Julius and his rogue stealing my family heirloom. Fuck that guy. I don't want to play at that table. And next week I'm gonna screw him over. Or, you know, like that's not what you want.
Or like it becomes almost like an open wound that every time you don't know because it hasn't been talked about, it hasn't been aired. Like, you don't know that was a problem, and it happens again and again, and it slowly builds up until.
But I also think that it is both players' responsibility to find out if there is a problem, right? It's not just the person with the problem who needs to like come forward necessarily. I think it like a frank discussion between everybody after a game, being like, is everybody good? Do you want to talk about anything? Like, how is everybody feeling? You know, is like an important factor that like a lot of the safety tools on Twitch shows and like streaming in general go back to that, like lines and veils and like checking in and making sure all this other stuff, right? But like after the show, everybody's just like, gonna go get dinner later, nerds. You know what I mean? And it's like, they're, you know, that's kind of over at that point. So you're only doing half the job. Yeah. You know, like, I think most of the time.
If you have more, you could finish off your thought.
No, go ahead, Sheepy. Sorry, I could rant all day about this stuff.
Me too. So just to like add in to what you said, like my experience as a showrunner, like limited as it is, like there's only so much I can do as a showrunner. But I try to do as much as I can for like after show care and stuff. So like
this isn't me at all saying like it is the responsibility of the DM. In fact, I think it's a table responsibility. If you have a problem with a player, that's not necessarily the DM's duty at all. The DM isn't your mom. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like if you and that player need to talk it out, that's on you and that player to do that. Yes. Right? Like the DM already has enough responsibilities. They're not your therapist too. You know what I mean? Like, if there's a problem with the DM, then you know, like that's a whole other thing, and you can talk that out. Yeah. If you want the DM there, so there's like some mediation or whatever, that's another thing, right? But I don't know.
I would say as the showrunner, you know, on the Wandering Inn, I feel some personal responsibility to make sure that people are you know, like keeping their like not even as the DM, as the showrunner. Like making sure everyone is happy and healthy and these type of things. So like there's been a lot of instances as a DM where I've you know, initiated an encounter, and we've kind of talked about it before, and you know, like, but you know when you're GMing or DMing, there's always instances where something crops up like unexpectedly, and you kind of have to approach it cautiously because you're not sure how people want to deal with it and how people want to.
Sure.
So I'll, after the show, as GM or DM, I'll go to them and I'll be like, hey, so that was kind of like a heavy RP scene that, you know, like could be quite, emotionally draining or you know, like rough. Are you good with it? And in general, they tend to be like, yeah. But I have, sorry, I'll just finish the...
No, yeah, please.
So I have found, however, there are certain personality types where regardless of a check-in, they will always say they're okay because they feel like they should say they're okay. So the thing I do as showrunner is I push people. And it may not be the best way to do it, but I found that it's much, much more healthy, whereby if they say they're okay, I'll check 2 or 3 more times and push them just in case they're like harboring problems. Because
here's the thing, Sheepy. I think that the advice on this point is very, very different depending on if you are a streamed show or if you are a casual at-home game, right? Like, the way you act as a showrunner is entirely up to you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, if you want to be hands off, then you'll have a hands off show. If you want to be fully engaged with your cast, making sure everybody's okay, like really getting into it and like being like you say, like trying to like make sure that like make sure, you know what I mean, that people are okay, then that's your choice as well. But most people are not having that issue. You know what I mean? Like when you're talking about like a game in general, we're usually talking about like people that are not streaming. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like people who are playing a game casually at home and they need to worry about like their friend, like their friend Allie being really mad at them over some fake bullshit for like a whole week.
So,
you know?
This is actually really interesting because it speaks to a difference of perspective. Just purely because I've never really done an offline game, an off-stream game. Like, everything about what I do in TTRPGs is always shows and online and viewable and etc. So I can't speak from experience in term I can't speak on those the offline stuff.
I've certainly done a lot more shows than I have like offline shows or like offline games at this point, but like I have the experience of like the LARP stuff, which is just like my own, you know, that I share stories from, but that I don't have any like way to stream it, so it's kind of my thing. And then I have a great deal of experience in the space, if you know what I mean, like just like generally knowing like what the good vibes are, so to speak. I think 90% of games are gonna be okay just like D&Ding around. You know what I mean? Doing D&Ding stuff, and maybe none of this is like advice that you need to worry about or whatever. But if you want to get into the like emotionally draining, like full on like Dark Souls level, you know, like emotional vibes and so forth, like you gotta have some way to like make sure that doesn't spill over into your friendships and your interactions with a person, right? Like I've seen so many times, and this is just like a LARP phenomenon because bleed is like a huge part of LARPing. I've seen so many times people break up with their significant others to get together with the character's significant other's player. I've seen it so many times.
It's like dancing.
Like so much. And to be fair, I met my partner at LARP. You know, like my current partner, and we had intense emotional scenes together with our characters. And then realized that we could be like best friends, you know what I mean? And like, and like that we could have that connection and like build on that. And that's kind of how that happens. So it's not all bad, you know, but you've got to be so careful, right? When it comes to these things, and you've got to really consider, you got to consider from an outsider's perspective, what you are doing. Right? Like, because or maybe a friend could tell you that you're being crazy. You know what I mean? Because, like, sometimes you can't tell. You know what I mean? But, like, I've had a lot of scenes where I've come to this conclusion of, like, oh, okay, like, a month later, I'm like, I shouldn't have done that. That was like me, the person, speaking through the character because I hate that guy. Or whatever, you know what I mean? Because, like, it works the other way, too. If I have a skewed perspective on a player, then my character gets a skewed perspective on their character. You know what I mean? If I'm bleeding in the opposite direction. So people were asking in chat, bleed. Allow me to explain what bleed is. Bleed is the seeping of emotions from one barrier to another of like your character and your real life. So I'll give you a theoretical. Let's say me and Jimmy are best buddies. And we have two characters who are best buddies, right? There's not a lot of chance for like that to go wrong necessarily. The things align. But if me and Jimmy in game get into an argument in character, you know, he kills my in character wife or whatever, and there's like a really nasty fight that ensues between me and Jimmy. If after the game me and Jimmy are not still friends, that's bleed. You know what I mean? Like, that is the emotions of the character actions influencing your real life. You know,
Yeah.
it is the feeling of the game being real, and it works in the opposite direction too. Where if I like hate whoever it is, you know what I mean? I can't think of a good name example. I've used them all. I have like 3.
Sheepdog.
Yeah. If I hate Sheepy, then we go into character, and I've never met his character before, and I immediately hate him for no reason.
Yeah.
That's a problem too. Yeah. In environments like LARP, where you're gonna not like everyone because it's 100 people over an entire weekend. You know what I mean? Like, in a group that size, not everybody's gonna get along, right? At a D&D table, bleed in the opposite direction is much less likely, right? Like when you're all friends sitting around your living room table or whatever.
Well, there is like a smaller version. I don't know if it's bleed or not, but that feeling of like, I think it's partially the aspect of it being a game and wanting to win, but also like I've found GMing before, people can get very upset with me if they don't roll well, and if their character doesn't get the things they want.
I've actually been experiencing that recently, where I'm like, well, we might have a lethal encounter on the table, but then somebody's line is like character death, but I'm like, that's part of the game that you're playing, like, and I don't really know how to interact with that, right? Like, if you're not willing to engage with the game, then I don't know how to help. You know, like, we need to play something else. You know, which is a little tough.
I would say ego is a little bit in play there, where people very often people want to play the Marvel superhero, where they always win and they always have the cool scene and they always do the cool stuff.
I mean, the thing that people forget about the Marvel superheroes is they have to get decked first, right? Like, it's like Goku powering up. You can't always win. You have to lose and then win in triumph to get like the fucking payoff. If you always win, it's boring.
One of the things I've been playing with for a long time and trying to like refine is making failure cool.
Trying to make sure that it doesn't look like they're just an idiot.
I mean, there are instances where your character looking like an idiot can be cool. It's about how it's like framed and how it's like seen. You know, like for example, to use the Marvel example, Thor very often it looks like a buffoon or like an idiot or whatever, but it's in a cool way where it's funny, or you know, like, so if you can frame, there's a really good example with, do you know Scraticus? He's not really part of the sphere anymore.
I have played on Scraticus's channel back when Scraticus was around. Yes.
Yeah. We had a game where Scraticus was just, he had the worst run of luck, where he kept failing to unlock his handcuffs, and so it turned into a comedy scene where he kept accidentally handcuffing himself to himself, and was having to fight in combat being handcuffed, and like his like leg was going all over the place because his hand was handcuffed to his leg. It was really funny and everyone enjoyed it massively, but like if you frame it in the wrong way, or if the person playing like doesn't approach it the right way, it can turn into this huge thing where they're massively upset, and you know, they're like, I want my character to be cool, and he looked like a buffoon, and you know, so it's I don't know, like, we said we weren't going to talk about it much, but I don't know if you felt it at all during The Last Ditch when you guessed it, but
I have like my opinions of The Last Ditch where it was fun. Like, I have
we talked about this, but for example, when
my further opinions are, I think you focus very like quite a lot on the die rolls in terms of like the way that you narrate, and that from a player perspective during that game, and I said this in the after show, but from a player perspective during that game, I felt like you were blaming me for your bad rolls. Oh, you know what I mean? Like a lot of the show. You're like, sheep dice, fucking sheep dice for like every 3 seconds.
I can,
and it's like, okay, cool, man. Like, we know you're rolling bad. It's fine.
I can appreciate that. Like, it wasn't the intention or the wanted outcome.
I know.
It was more
I know. Like, we've talked about it already.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, we don't need to go over it again. But like, I definitely think that there is something to consider for you there. You know what I mean? Like it does come across a certain way if you're not in on the meme.
Yeah, that's fair. And we now see Sheep Dice jumping into the chat. Hey guys, how's it going? Thank you for that. What I was saying was like the instance with Grant's character getting like exploded out of the landing craft, and then like, you know, kind of like Grant rolled really badly during that initial landing, and he was so close to dying with that character. And I was like, how can we make this fun and interesting and like part of the entertainment, as opposed to, you know, like the thing I don't like seeing is kind of cutoffs, where you put like a wall in front of the character when they fail, and you go, you don't do this thing. You know, I mean,
the way I have always played that, if you want a little bit of an input on that, is the way that Blades does it, where I don't know if you've ever played Blades in the Dark, but if you haven't,
not yet. I want to.
They have a system of like, a roll can be risky and have impact, or it can be less risk, and you know, like, and if you fail a lower risk roll, you have to make a higher risk roll to continue to do the thing, sort of thing. So there's this system of like escalating risk where failure can make a situation more difficult, but it doesn't prevent you from following through.
Yeah.
Right. And there are certain instances where I can do this and where I can't do this, because playing D&D on the D&D channel means playing D&D like D&D, for example.
Yes.
But or like being told I'm showing off a module means I can't write other stuff into it. You know, like, generally. But I like to do it in a way that's like, your first failure may be bad for you or put you in a bad position, but then all that means is that your next roll is going to be harder to succeed, and the consequences of failing will be worse. You know what I mean? It's like, you can choose to keep pushing on the point if you want to, but it will get worse for you.
Yeah,
basically, like, if you fail.
To highlight that thought, could I suggest is it a metaphor or an allegory? I'm not sure. But anyway, it's like when you accidentally fall into quicksand. You can either keep struggling and maybe keep sinking in, or you could just be like, no, I'm gonna back out of this situation and be like, you know. So
I mean, and the other thing is like, if you as a DM don't want the players to fail, don't make them roll.
Yes.
Like, if you don't want them to fail to open the door, don't make opening the door a roll. It's just a stupid thing. If they roll and they fail, and you're like, what the fuck do I do? Then you fucked up. That's your fuck up.
I've had instances where I've been a player, and my GM has been like, again, I won't say names or anything, but my GM has been like, here's a horrific threat, ooh, dun dun dun, and then you can very clearly tell the moment where they realize they fucked up, and they put too much of a threat on the board, and they didn't want you dead, they just wanted, you know, to challenge you. And they're like, oh, and then the bad guy goes, curse you, you have defeated me, without defeating them, and like running away, and you're like, that was weird.
I mean, you know, sometimes the miscalculation is based on dice.
Yeah.
Sometimes the miscalculation is based on thinking they will do something one way and they do something the other. You have a powerful lich that's going to help them, but they decide to attack it instead.
Yeah. But that's
like there are a lot of reasons that could happen, and like the way that you play that off is making it look like you planned it all along. You know what I mean? Like,
exactly as planned.
I mean, my GMing style is just improvise the shit out of things and act like I totally meant to do it, and then at the end of game be like, I hope you guys know I was on the seat of my pants that entire freaking game making shit up as you went, and they're like, no, we didn't know at all. We're just doing things. You know?
Good
like,
cover maintained.
Yeah, you just gotta like. I don't know. It's half planning and half improvising, as with anything.
Yeah. Well, you can
knowing
never predict
your
players.
Yeah, but also knowing your options is important, right?
Mm,
Like having options available to
yeah.
you that you can pull from at the drop of a hat for like an NPC or
Mm,
like a place, or if they ask you like is there a tavern nearby and you haven't planned one but you like have some ideas for what one could
yeah,
be,
yeah.
like there's yeah, I mean all
Or
of that
like
stuff, right?
pulling out previous ideas you've had in previous things to like that you've like worked on a while back, and it's still in your head, and you're like, yes, there's this thing right here.
I
I
mean, I also think we all trend towards certain.
oh yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
every person trends towards certain things. I've used the same sort of NPC many times in many games because it's what I think of when I
Yeah.
think of a thing. When I'm like, I need to put a threat in here. It's gonna be an ogre. Okay, it's an ogre. What do ogres sound like? They sound like this because I've played an ogre like 8 times in 8 different games. Yeah, what can I what? How can I characterize them as being threatening but also really dumb? I will describe them as picking their nose while they talk to you. You know, stuff like that. Like
Picking their teeth with a tree, just like
yeah.
uh,
I
yeah.
have used the nose picking ogre guard in like 4 campaigns. I'm sure I've done that.
That's fair. Well, I think sometimes you have to, especially like sometimes. Speaking of what you were saying before, sometimes my either episode plan or like NPC kind of detailing looks like a like program on the computer where it's like if X then Y. If no X, then Z, and if Z
Yeah,
fails,
and
then
like depending on how long you've been playing with the players, you can predict how they're going to do things. Like for
yes,
my Star
yes.
Wars game, I can basically say like they will never take the direct combat approach because they have never done it before.
Mm,
They've never been like we enter the room and start shooting. Like that's never ever been a thing they've done. So like planning for that is just like a if this happens, but it won't. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
yeah.
and you learn your players and you learn the rhythm of the game
And
that
the
you're
players learn
going
you
around.
as well, you know?
Hey, so someone in chat, Haggy Land says, "I love challenging my GM by talking to random NPCs and getting to know them. I can tell you that your GM hates you. Just you may think that that's a fun, cool thing to do, but it gets real old real quick,
uh,
super quick.
I can say that, yes, a little bit, but I do also enjoy it as a GM. I think some of my more interesting NPCs have come about because of it.
Yeah, but like every NPC,
Oh yeah, I'm not. I mean, it doesn't say every NPC. I'm assuming it's like occasionally I'll go and talk to a random NPC to like keep my GM on my toes.
I
But
mean, sure,
if you
that's fine.
if you literally create NPCs every 5 seconds to make your GM create like this menagerie of randomly created on the spot NPCs, you're a horrible person.
Okay, all right. Well, there's a scale thing going on here.
There's a
If
scale,
every
yeah.
if every game a player was trying to like create 6 NPCs by talking to random commoners and asking me everything about their life, I'd be
Yeah.
like, yeah, they tell you nothing because you're some random. Get out of their face. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I
But I am
definitely.
also like my style is a little bit um terse occasionally. You know what
Yeah,
I mean? Like I will admit to being a little bit of a down to business kind of a person. I've always
yeah,
been the
that's
person in
fair.
campaigns. I've always been the person in campaigns who like while we're sitting around with our fingers up our butts in the tavern, I want to move on and do whatever it is that we need to be doing. So I'm looking for the next thing to do while everybody else is ordering 17 pots of stew and role playing their consuming of said stew. I want to keep going, moving to
We
the thing, the objective.
we had in Sunkist we had a date night or like a date between a player and one of the NPCs, and they ended up getting into a really deep conversation, and it got to the point where they were asking questions that I just didn't know, and it got into like university and philosophy and like who his favorite philosopher was and stuff like that, and it turned into a really interesting game of how much can Sheepy make up on the spots. To the point where I can't remember what it was that she asked, but she asked a question. I was like, I need a second here because my brain just stopped working. Um, but yeah, it's
I
it's fun.
I I do enjoy that stuff, and one of the things that again I got from LARP as a thing, like a LARP tool, is canonic information. And how this kind of works is you just get a group of like 3 people together, 4 people, and one person is in the hot seat for like a minute.
Yeah.
And people rapid fire questions about your character at you. You know, what's their favorite color? What do they like to eat? What's like a flaw of theirs? Like what, you know, whatever, all this stuff. And you just have to answer. You can't pass. You must answer. And when you answer, you conjure it into canon. You know what I mean?
Okay,
so it's just like an easy way to start like feeling like you could play a different person is like adding these small details to the character. So like sitting down with someone and being like, you know, what's the saddest thing in their history? You know, like what makes them happier than anything else? What food do they like? What, you know, whatever. And one of the funniest things that came out of this was I have a friend who plays the grumpiest wild elf you've ever seen in your life. And I mean like the stone-faced, spear-carryingest, like angriest guy who could kill you on the drop of a hat for no reason just because you looked at him wrong or whatever. You know, just like the kind of character that he played. But during one of these sessions, he like sort of canonized into existence that the character has like an undeniable sweet tooth. Like they've never had sugar before because they're like processed sugar because they're like a wild elf. They've been out, you know, like berries and stuff is like the extent, right?
Yeah.
So when they were given like a brownie or like a cake or something, they ate it like a monster. They would like shove the whole thing into their mouth, chew it down, and then threaten the person who had it for more. You know what I mean? Like, and it was just this like weird quirk, but it made the character like so more of a character. You know what I mean? Like this like weird thing that they did. And eventually the player was so sick of it because people queued in that they could like get him to eat basically anything sweet like right away. And so they kept giving him stuff, and he's just like, I can't eat it. like you're just like this whole box of donuts, and I'm gonna eat all of it because that's what the character would do. But oh my god! But it was super funny because it was like strange, unexpected, and vaguely threatening. You know, like you know, if they finish whatever it is they're eating first and you have something else, they'll take it from you, or they'll like threaten you for it or whatever. That stuff. I don't, you know.
Yeah, I always enjoy those. Things.
I like the method of like first thing that pops into my head, because usually the first thing that pops into your head is the thing you're interested in. Yeah. Right? Like you don't normally think quickly of something you hate.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? When you're asked a character question, what's your favorite color? What's the character's favorite color? Blue. I can live with blue. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't say something stupid like orange or something.
Just a big safety card.
Yeah. I mean, I do like orange, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's like the answers that come first are often the answers you're most interested in playing.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of cool characters, and a lot of them have gone through that like creation. The other thing I like to do is kind of outsource a little bit of that creation. Like as a streamer, when I've got a character in my brain, whether this be a D&D character or a LARP character or whatever, I'm often talking about them in my streams, you know, and like how they feel about stuff, what their past is like, how to characterize them, you know, like what details can we add in that I like hadn't thought of, but maybe you have, you know, like, and there's a lot of that kind of stuff. I did a lot of that for my Dragon Heist character, Rin Stillwater. She had a lot
nice name.
Yeah, not bad, right?
Runs deep.
Yeah, she was a bard who wanted to be a wizard, basically. Okay. But she didn't have the academic know-how. And before she was a bard, she was a thief, and she tried to steal something from ancient Magus's mansion, you know? And then she was punished by said Magus to spend a decade as that Magus's familiar. So she was a bird for 10 years, basically. And then when she was released, she was like, well, he's going to take me on as an apprentice now. And like, we've been together all this whole time. Yeah. And he just kicked her out and was like,
okay, bye.
I'm done with you now. Jeez. And so there's this whole like like wizard worship that came out of like being so closely bound to a powerful wizard for so long. So like any arcanely focused character, she was like very respectful of them, and like, you know, that kind of stuff. But also she didn't have the int score to be a wizard herself, so she was a bard. And I made her a lore bard so that I could get some wizard stuff, you know, along the way. So she got like fireball and things eventually.
And probably very proud of what she could do with magic.
Yeah, well, and I was planning, and it's interesting because I was planning her to be a lot weirder of a character than she turned out being.
Yeah.
Because every other person in that group was a fucking weirdo, and they needed a group mom. So I ended up like having to sort of like direct things because every single character in that group was fucking crazy.
So not looking to be critical, was that bleed or was that just how the character evolved?
I mean, I think that was just like there needed to be somebody role playing a character that could have a conversation without stabbing someone.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
I'm using bleed as a word, not in a like a critical way, being like, oh, you bled into your character and turned out, but more in like
I made her.
Necessity.
I changed her from a little bit of an oddball to more of like a sarcastic group face.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because it was necessary to keep the show moving.
Yes.
Like the show would not proceed well if I had not done that, because somebody needed to do it. You know what I mean? Like, you need somebody who can talk to people.
Yeah,
like,
I was just wondering if it was like organic or by necessity, essentially.
It was I mean, it was organic in the fact that like during the first session I realized I couldn't do what I was planning to do, because if I did, if I stuck to my guns while everybody else was sticking to their guns, we would get nowhere. You know what I mean? So like, I chose to be the person to do that because I'm often the person moving stories forward anyway. Yeah. Right? Like I am the person who will kick it in the butt. Right?
I would say there was, like, in what you said at least, there was some grounding in that idea for the character anyway, because like being a bird for 10 years can add
that kind of sucks.
Yeah, it can make you a bit more serious. It can make you a bit more like cautious and respectful of people you don't know their, like, let's say, power level, not wanting to
lesson learned, right?
Yeah.
But then there's also that like sick Stockholm syndrome of like being near anyone for 10 years like enamors you to them regardless of like how poorly they've treated you. And we did eventually get to a scene where she got to interact with her master again, because she had to like ask him for a favor because like one of their party members was missing and she needed to like know about it, and it was like last resort stuff, and it was those scenes are some of my absolute favorite scenes I've ever played. I think like the scenes with Alistair, who was the like wizard, and
good
Rin.
Wizard name.
And he was like a polymorphic master, so he always looked different. You know what I mean? Like he was like a stately wizard one time and like a wizard Emperor Palpatine guy the next, and you know, like that was the idea.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was cool. I really like exploring that kind of thing with characters, like things that will affect them in like moments of weakness, things in their past that will characterize like how they are now. I love curses. I love misfortune. I love like tragedy. You know, hubris. I mean, like I you know, stuff that like leads to bad situations but good story.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, is
essentially like Shakespeare into Greek into.
I mean, I think my favorite character that I've ever played, and I've said this on a couple of shows now, and including my stream and stuff, when people ask me this, was my character for our Burning Wheel campaign on the Roll20 channel, whose name was Joy, and she was a court jester, basically, in a Transylvanian style castle, like a Romanian style castle, that after the news that God had died.
Okay.
Like God was dead.
Yeah.
And that was the start of the campaign, was that God died. And and she was like the other characters were like a priest and like a noble lady and like a witch. You know, I decided to play this character that was like really disadvantaged in terms of like their social status, in terms of what they could really achieve. Like my goals were much smaller than everybody else's goals generally.
Yeah.
Which was fine, and I like to play that. I like being the underdog. I like being the servant, the lackey, the disenfranchised character. You know, I'm okay with that, and I think I role play that quite well when I get the chance. But she was also like a character from another culture, so she was from a place like far away. She had like different colored skin and hair than all the people around her, and her style of gesturing was like very sarcastic and like cutting, you know.
That's a like, I'm not gonna say trope, but that's a really cool like fantasy thing that I love to see.
Yeah.
Is the jester who's like an other. You know,
and that's how I played her, right?
Yeah.
She was an other, but so eventually, God's dead. Dave's character tried to summon an angel and conjured an everlasting winter that plunged the kingdom into disaster, right? And every encounter that Joy had was an encounter of ego. Like, it was all how far am I willing to get pushed? How far am I willing to be, like, insulted? How far, am I, like, gonna allow myself to be manipulated?
Yeah.
Eventually she, like, tried to stab a powerful wizard, because he was, like, basically, like, promised her some things and then reneged when, you know, like, things happened. Got our hopes up and then dashed them, so to speak. So it was time to get vengeance. You know, causing them to all get like cast out of the castle. The castle turns into this like Dark Souls-esque dungeon of frozen ice and doom.
Yeah.
And then we're in the town like around the place, and like the remaining noble court is like in disarray, and you know there's a rise in like merchant class sort of like soldier hiring people, and there's some criminal elements going on, and basically like there's this other stuff, and then there's this culture of Joy's and like some of the people from her culture that she like meets and interacts with, and she's never been to their homeland, you know, and like she grew up here basically. And there's a whole lot of like learning her own culture involved in it, but eventually let's just say like eventually she makes a mistake.
Okay.
And she dies. She is killed by a man with a sword.
Okay.
And instead of saying like, well, I'll move on to another character, we tried to think of like what we could do to keep her like story going, because I really wanted to keep playing her.
Yeah.
And we came up with like that she would be resurrected. But she would be dead. She would be a zombie. She would be the hungry dead. You know what I mean? Like,
okay.
Like, so she became sort of this like revenant where she could only eat like human living flesh, you know, like for sustenance. She looked dead and decayed, and you know, like had to wear a disguise at all times, like makeup and so forth. Her goal was to figure out how to get herself embalmed so she wouldn't decay into nothing. You know what I mean? Like over time. So like going to the people of her culture who had this like kind of Egyptian death vibe, and like trying to like make a deal to like keep living but being dead, but that's like blasphemy. And it was so good. It was like so good. It was super, super fun. And throughout all this, she has this like love-hate relationship with this NPC that was like a minstrel in the court, and like the first interaction I had with him was that I pantsed him during his performance.
Okay.
And then like we shot crossbows at each other at one point, both missed because we suck at crossbows. It turned into this like both of us are cast out, both of us are disenfranchised, like how can we work together thing.
Yeah.
And like we did a job together where we like threw acid in the face of some criminal mastermind or something for some money. And then I disappeared for 3 months being dead, you know? and came back, and there's this like heartfelt like we can still be friends, Emilio. Like we're still partners, you know. And he's like, well, I've moved on. I have these other people now, and you know, like I have this job, and it's nice, and like I don't know. There's a lot of really really great emotions in joy, and playing her, I always felt like I was inhabiting her the way I might like a LARP character. She felt deep, she felt complex, you know what I mean? Enough that like when I was speaking as her or role playing as her, it felt like not like being at a tabletop game, but being at a LARP, you know, like in the way that it felt like personal.
Yeah.
And I have wanted to recapture that for like a really long time, you know, but it's definitely like she's my favorite of all the characters I've played, and I've played so many characters. She's definitely not my most popular, but she's my favorite.
Well, yeah.
You know.
What's the name of that campaign? I'm assuming it's viewable.
This campaign, it's on the Roll20 YouTube channel. It's Burning Wheel Game Master Series 2, I think. I'll look it up. But it's not. It never got finished because one of our players became very ill. And we never really got back to it. So like it ended on a non-ending. Right.
Well, it's still like, given the passion with which you were speaking about it, it feels like something that should be linked in the description below.
I mean, I highly recommend it should you get the opportunity.
So if anyone feels that
assuming that you don't have any problems with engaging with stuff run by Adam Coble, obviously, because that was our GM.
Well, I mean, like the thing is you know, the event is the problem.
It's worth mentioning. Just some people, you know, like some people that's a line, and I want to make sure that like that line is respected.
That's fair.
I personally have had lots of good games with Adam. I don't agree with anything that he did, but you know, it's fine. So the very first episode, it's Game Master Series 3. And here it is. I have the very, very, very first episode. A good link. There you go.
Thank you. That will be good in the description. So, like obviously, in the YouTube video,
there are something like 36 episodes of like 3 or 4 hours. Yeah.
In the YouTube video for this, I obviously put in the usual links of like Twitter and Twitch and Instagram if you want. But I like to go a bit deeper than that and do like stuff that the guest has been on, and so of course, because otherwise sometimes people don't look that deep into it, and it's. I
mean, honestly, if you link the Roll20 YouTube channel, I'm on like 50% of the shows going back 5 years.
See, I will do that, but that's the type of thing people could find themselves. It's like the things that the guest likes themselves, and you know, things that they're on and they want.
Hey Sheepy, I'm kind of in a groove. Do you want me to talk about some more character stuff from other games? Because like my brain is like, what other characters could I talk about now?
Yeah, so I was about to say, like, we're kind of at the inverted commas halfway point.
Whatever.
So if like the tier list isn't something we have to do. It's just something that's kind of a bit of fun. So if you're on a roll and you want to keep,
I'm good here if you want to hear this stuff. But you know, it's like, is this the kind of content you want, or you know, that's kind of up to you. It's your thing.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. It's actually about you. So at the end of the day, if you're
all right, well, let me ramble about some old characters for a little bit.
Let's do it.
We'll see where we get to.
Oh, I'm down.
So I've played a lot of tabletop games. I don't know if that's clear or not, but it should be clear that I have played so many games that like there are characters that exist that I've forgotten that I ever played.
Yeah.
But there are a couple that I think early on in my like quote unquote career were really cool and impactful. One of them, of course, the really obvious one that I have to talk about if I'm going to mention my characters is Ishi Snaggletooth. She is a kobold duelist fighter You know, just like a wannabe hero, but she's a kobold, so nobody takes her seriously.
Okay.
Kind of a good, chaotic good mess of a character. She was a character that I played for Tomb of Annihilation. And I think she was like a little bit lightning in a bottle in that like people really seem to like her. She's the character I by far have the most fan art of, and like that by far have the most interest in. And she's in Idle Champions of the Forgotten Realms, which is pretty cool. You know, like I have a character in a video game. It's pretty neat.
Is that the idle?
It's the clicker
game.
The D&D idle clicker game. Yeah.
Didn't they add was it Arkan who's the character from?
They've added like a million characters.
Oh, okay.
Like all kinds of characters from everywhere, but my character is also in it. So,
hell yeah, fucking
yeah. But she's definitely my most quote unquote like popular. I don't think she ranks very highly for me personally. I think I like her because other people like her mostly, and like
it's always a nice thing when
dorky kobolds are a fun trope. You know, like you know, they're very well meaning, but you're just trying their best to be a hero, and it's fine. You know, and stuff, and that's just kind of. That was kind of her character, but she also benefited from the party around her because Andrew, who is a dear friend of mine, played Little Fox, who was this like big furbolg, but she was like quiet, very quiet furbolg, and I was very loud, small, yappy kobold. So we just like rocket and grooted that shit. You know what I mean? Like we were a pair, and I was the talky one, and Little Fox was the quiety one, and they just like had a great like little. It's hard to explain their interactions without like actually like going to the campaign, but it was like it felt very natural. It felt very organic. Like it didn't feel manufactured. It felt like it was like kind of real. And it helped that Ishi's stats are fucking nuts. Like I rolled so well. She was like the most powerful kobold to ever exist. You know, like fuck. But yeah, she's super great. Really like her. Tomb of Annihilation is by far, I think, our most popular campaign, and Ishii by far my most popular character.
Oh, that's a nice confluence of events.
So, I mean, I think part of it is that the campaign was popular, so the character was popular. But if you haven't watched it and you're interested in Little Kobold Adventurer, she's definitely my like D&D canonical. Like, if I could guest star, I'd probably guest star as her somewhere. You know what I mean? Who else? Who else is good?
She's kind of like stuck with you. She's faded a bit.
Yeah, I mean, she's like a D&D character I would play again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Okay,
for 5e. Usually I do a campaign and then I abandon whatever character it is. So I move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't tend to want to like tie my brand in with a specific character forever. You know, because otherwise, you're going back to level 1 all the time with this character, you know what I mean? Like, and you don't want to do that.
And it feels less special when you're like remaking the character over and over again, and you're like, this is, you know.
I mean, Jeevesy mentions a character as well, Karasu, who was a monk, Undying Monk or whatever, the like Death Monk one. Okay. Who was a Shatterkai Death Monk. I got some really great art of Karasi. The official art for her is awesome. But she had like one broken arm, so she did like the Oron sling move. And the idea was that she was actually a very highly leveled, powerful adventurer. But she'd been drained of her levels by like a lich, you know, like in her combat. Yeah. And so she was like weak, but she had experience, you know, sort of thing. And so she again like ended up kind of group momming a bunch of nerds. I think there was a lot more I could have done with her, but I think one of my favorite memes came out of her, which is just that like she sleeps by just standing out in the darkness staring at the moon. You know, like her reverie is just staring at the sky.
Yeah.
Which seemed just like the creepiest fucking thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like a horror movie type thing.
Yeah, right? I just love it as an image for her. She was like very, very like grim and determined and sort of like dark in tone.
Yeah.
The rest of the group was a little more comedically focused or like positively vibing. So it was like, yeah, I gotta stick with the group, you know. But I think in a different campaign she would have some good potential. Yeah, some people are mentioning. I don't remember cricket. I don't remember cricket, Malcariel, but dice I do. Or was cricket the bard, or not the bard, but the next one I played in that same campaign. I don't. Oh, cricket and Blades in the Dark. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, cricket is fun. Cricket's a fun one. That was on my channel. Those games are a lot of a blur for me. But okay, so dice.
Was that during your over commitment to lots of shows and stuff?
It was when I was trying to like build my own brand as well at the same time as like playing other stuff. But yeah, I mean, she was a good character too. She was very, very powerful. She was built out quite well. As a great lurk, Blades in the Dark lurk. Yeah. Very acrobatic, very sneaky, very swordy. And she was super fun to play, but I honestly don't remember a whole lot about cricket. Dice, cool. However,
I like the name.
Dice is a whole other thing.
Okay.
Dice was have you played Powered by the Apocalypse or no? Sorry, Apocalypse World. Have you played Apocalypse World, Shippy?
I haven't, no, but I've seen it.
Okay.
In a show.
So Dice was an Apocalypse World character, and we did a one shot, and we were planning to just do a one shot of Blades of not Blades of oh my god, Apocalypse World.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the one shot was like we set up some conflict between some characters. We like played it out. I was playing like a biker gang leader named Dice, and I had my biker gang with me to like, you know, go and steal someone from a temple or something. I don't remember the exact setup of the one shot, but it was so fun and all of us enjoyed it so much that we decided to like do a campaign. And I changed Dice's class to like a tavern owner. So she owned like this bar in town, basically. Like she settled down and owned a bar. Yeah. And people kept fucking with the bar, and all I wanted, the character's goal was just to like not have people fuck with her. Like that was the entire goal of the character. And so every time there was a problem, she would retaliate like double. You know what I mean? Like to like. Be like, don't fuck with me, you know, like she's the kind of lady who has a sawed-off shotgun underneath the bar and, you know, isn't afraid to swing it around. But it became like such this game of escalation where she was just like, she would never give up no matter what happened. The rule was just always escalate, like make it worse, trying to make it better, you know, like all the time.
Wait, so I might be completely off on this, so feel free to tell me I'm completely wrong and I'm crazy, but was this with Pony Punch on Table Story?
No, it wasn't.
I have like this really vivid image of that.
This is myself. Adam Coble was the GM.
Okay.
Then the players were like me, Blue Jay, Dave, and Andrew. It was like the typical group for a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about.
All right, yeah.
We had like an established group, kind of.
I don't know why I had that then.
But eventually this character ended up... I'm not going to talk about how we got there, but ended up standing on... like jumping from her own moving car onto the hood of her hated enemy's car and shooting him through the windshield of the car that while she was standing on it with a revolver and careening off a cliff standing on the top of the car. That was like the stuff that Dice did. You know, like jump from my own car, abandoning that car entirely, while standing on the hood of my enemy's car, shoot him in the face while he's driving, and then careen off a cliff.
That's like some 80s action hero shit.
Yeah, yeah. She didn't die either. She was still alive.
Definitely 80s action hero.
She lost an arm basically in that narrative, and for the rest of the game, it's like she was recovering or like trying to recover and stuff.
Yeah.
But shit kept fucking with her, and she kept escalating. Even when she was like limping around, ultra injured, she's like, you know, trying to play the like tough girl act and like don't fuck with me stuff, and eventually she died.
I mean, honestly, if I saw someone hero off a cliff while shooting a dude through a windshield and then still survive that, I'd sign up for the whole don't fuck with her shit. Like, I'd be like, fair play.
the in the same way that you have a sheep dice meme, the meme for my role playing game characters was they always get their arms chopped off. Like I've lost so many arms in various campaigns. But that campaign hadn't ended when I died, so I made another character, and it was really interesting because of the way that character started to like shape the world around them.
Yeah.
Because I played there's like a class in Apocalypse World that's like kind of an influencer. You're like a bard. They're called the Skinner, I think, and they're basically like a face character, right?
Okay.
And they have a performance. Like there's some kind of performance that they do, that like enamors people to them.
Yeah.
And I decided that her performance was like ritual scarification, basically. She would like carve your flesh up as art, as art.
Kind of like tattooing, but obviously more like
kind of, but like
scars.
way worse. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it got grim, like really grim. Playing her, she was this like very creepy, like nearing Cenobite territory. Yeah, like kind of a lady, and it was just like a bit of a pivot for me, and I remember really liking playing her, but I honestly don't remember how she ended. You know what I mean? Like the campaign, the ending of it is not what I remember.
But that type of stuff is the type of thing that's not touched on at least from my experience in like shows and stuff. So that's really compelling to me.
I like to do that stuff, but there are so many people who will put a wall up in front of it, right? Like people will say like it's dark stuff, she was creepy as heck and stuff, but like I couldn't imagine trying to play her in a show with like current casts that I have. Like it would be impossible.
You definitely need to clear it at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
Make sure everyone's cool with it, and like if there was even like people who are kind of like, maybe you'd have to be.
You got to be careful. Like you do have to be careful. And this isn't me saying like people are more sensitive now. It's like me saying people check in better now, because I'm sure people were creeped out by it while I was doing it. In fact, I am like 100% sure there was a point where Andrew was like, "Can we just like move on to the next thing?" And I remember being like, "Yeah, of course. Sorry, I'm just getting a little into it." You know, like now we have good safety tools and stuff, and it's fine.
It's a different time. You know, like.
Yeah, and Melcariel brings up a thing that in chat that I remember saying now that I've been reminded, where like she was really the first character that made me separate the I do this and Heron does this. You know what I mean? Like where I wasn't saying like I do this thing, I was saying like Heron in third person does this thing because I don't want to be the one doing this thing, but I know that Heron would do this thing. You know what I mean? And like trying to separate that in a role-playing sense, right? Like character and person.
Because bleed can happen for viewers too.
Sure. Yeah.
Like I've noticed that and experienced it multiple times, where people watching will like dislike a character, and that bleeds into disliking the player, which is really weird.
It happens all the time. You see it all the time with like, this character annoys me, therefore I hate this person.
Yes.
Which I really don't like. We had a lot of trouble with that on various shows.
Oh yeah, same. It's there's been instances where people have like the other interesting thing. Sorry to like bring up my own thoughts and stuff, but there's a really interesting thing where like people will disagree with the choice a character makes because it's not optimal. And you're like, yeah, that's the character. Because the character isn't, you know... I think it's a problem when people approach.
But I also I also
yeah.
think that like there are a bunch of players out there that will hide malicious, unoptimal like group decisions behind that's the character as
Oh
a way
yeah,
to
sure.
shield them from the consequences of being a dick to everyone around them,
Yeah,
or like influencing the atmosphere in a way that makes it difficult for anyone to proceed, right? Like
yeah.
if your character doesn't want to be an adventurer, then why are you here? You know what I mean? If your character
Mm,
would rather turn around and go home, then how am I supposed to roleplay with that?
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like a certain degree, I think there's like, there's like, yes, it's the character. There are some decisions and some arguments that will come up because characters are characters, but also that you have to buy into the premise. And if you're not buying into the premise, or you're not like engaging with the premise in a way that like helps the group move towards an inevitable like conclusion to whatever it is that you're doing, like a narrative moving forward, then you're harming the people who want to play with you.
sure.
By putting them in a position where they have to bend to your demands all the time.
What I mean more is like, for example, a character not doing an insight check or believing something that an NPC
Oh,
or
sure.
someone says.
Sure.
You know,
That's a whole different thing, right? Yeah. Yeah, you're right. And that stuff is fine, and like viewers, I mean, I don't want to shit talk the viewers, but
no,
a lot of people out a lot of people out there have opinions about stuff they don't know fuck all about.
yes, I mean that's just the
And
internet, I think.
well, and I have dealt so many times with like, actually the rule is that you do it like this, and I'm like, no, it isn't. Look it up, and they look it up, and they're like, yeah, I just thought it was this because that's how we did it. And I'm like, yeah. Turns out you don't know every rule in every D&D book that ever existed. Wow, fucking crazy.
Yeah, and to be devil's advocate on this, for them, it's they like when they do it, they see it as like a helpful, like they can see it as like a helpful kind of like, oh, you're actually doing this wrong, but when you,
I think you're thinking for a collective that isn't a collective. Lots of them are just like,
I mean,
did this wrong.
Oh yeah, lots of them are, but lots of them aren't. You know, I'm kind of, you know, like basically saying like some people very and they can be very loud, will literally just shout and say like, you're doing this wrong, you're completely wrong, I'm right, blah blah blah. And
my takeaway on that is I don't care what the opinions of people who are not participating at my table are.
Yes, that's fair.
It would be like if you came into my kitchen, stood over my shoulder, and went, "You're doing it wrong." Like I don't, you're like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
But like, what I was going towards is essentially, those people see it from like their perspective only, where they think they're being helpful. You know, the ones that have good intentions.
And sometimes we call for that help, right?
Yeah. So the thing is like they're not looking at it from the perspective of you, who gets 50 comments a day of you're doing this wrong kind of thing. So like it's something that causes a disconnect between the showrunner, the player, the GM, and the viewer, because they don't see it from that perspective of, wow, this is getting old. And
I personally have never had any problems with people making comments about stuff because I don't internalize that stuff. I don't I don't take it personally, or I don't whatever. Like I'm happy to, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, like that's fine.
Yeah.
And even if I am wrong in the moment, that doesn't mean I'm going to change what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But also like there are some people out there, some streamers, some performers and stuff, who like get it all up in their head. You know what I mean? And I think that is a big mistake and will cause only problems for you if you start looking like you're perturbed by things. People want to do them more. So I mean, that's just like, that's like streaming the first rule.
I mean, so Like Retrograde says, I think a lot of people try not to backseat, and like, invariably when you have like, let's say 1,000 views on a video, 999 people aren't, backseating or doing anything. But every now and then, like, you'll watch a show or you'll watch a thing, and you'll get like an impulse, and every now and then that impulse will be like, oh, actually, or the well, actually, it's like, well, actually, that's not how that rule works, or that's not how the system works, or whatever.
I mean, I think the thing you have to consider when you get that impulse is, does it matter?
Well, yeah, but like, this is the thing: is if they think 9 times out of 10, if they think that 9 times out of 10,
what are we getting at here, Sheepy? Like, what are we talking about? Because I'm not really sure like what the point is, other than viewers say things. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm just, as I said, it was just kind of like, it's sorry, the subject has shifted further and further away from the original topic.
It's all good.
I was essentially saying that, like, as someone doing the comments, I think there's like a kind of content creator essentially blanket term, which is backseat gaming bad, where it's aggravating and it's all these kind of things. And I just like to think about the fact that, like, some people commenting like multiple times will resist the temptation to backseat, will resist the and like, every now and then, because I've done it before myself, where I'm like, oh, I have to tell someone this thing, and then immediately suffer regret when the person's like, oh, I actually knew that, and I'm like, oh no, I have made a social faux pas and I must now disappear from existence. And I think, like, it's worth, as annoying as it can be sometimes, having someone be like, well, this character wouldn't have done that because it doesn't make sense to do that. It's like, at the same time, I feel like, and this is kind of something I try to say to myself so I don't get aggravated by it. I feel like, people don't think about the fact that the thing they're saying has been said multiple times before.
I think the thing that we as content creators should remember when it comes to these kinds of things is that engagement means the person is interested enough to say something. It means they are listening to the words that are coming out of your mouth, and they are processing them, and they're in their brain, and they are saying a thing in chat. Some people are better at expressing whether or not that thing is a positive thing or not. It's like how you're gonna present it is a part of it. But even if you're like, actually that's wrong, it's this, it's usually just someone being an awkward Dorcas,
that is also true, yes.
And saying a thing on the internet because they are interested in the thing that they are watching. So actually, I think it's good. My rule is that if you have a rule reference, and this is a rule that I took from Adam, if you have a rule reference and you'd like to correct me on a rule that I have gotten wrong, give me a page number in the book that it is from. If you don't have a page number in the book that it is from, I do not care.
Yeah. And just for the record, I didn't say it was a bad thing. I just thought it was an interesting topic.
Oh, sure. I'm just like trying to, cause like we got to a point where I feel like the subject was people say things, and I'm like, I don't know how to engage with this. I think that people saying things is good, like generally. Yeah. And that, yes, it can sometimes be annoying, but I think that that's part of our job. You know what I mean? It's like people who make content to engage with the people who like the content because they like the content and provide the views.
So the initial thing I was talking about, like a while back, was that people were commenting about how they disagreed with like what a character would do, and we were talking about the bleed of viewers. So okay, I was kind of going into that.
I think the thing is, like, viewers of any media will have opinions about characters, right?
Yes.
In the same way that, like, in the same way that, like, I don't like, I don't know, Hawkeye because I feel like he's dumb and stupid or whatever.
Sure. I mean, that's an interesting conversation, but yeah.
I can go to, and it's not even true. I just needed an example.
Yeah,
you know, if I said that and then I went and watched a TTRPG show and I watched, I don't know, Critical Role, and I was like, you know, I really don't like Vaxladan. He pisses me off, and I don't, I don't enjoy that character or the characterization of that character, and I don't think they would do that, cause, cause why would they do that? You know what I mean? It's the same. Like it's the exact same thing. Like for a viewer, me playing Ishi Snaggletooth is the same as yeah, like, your Jeremy Renner playing fucking Hawkeye, right? Like it's the same. Like it's the character, and if you like it or you don't, you're gonna have opinions about it. And the thing is that we have the immediate feedback of Twitch chat being right there when they're like, "Oh no, I hate this," you know what I mean? But like that means they're listening to what's happening.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like and like I don't think that's a bad thing.
No.
In like any way for them to have feelings about stuff. Like if you don't have feelings about the media you're watching, why the fuck are you watching it? Like if you don't occasionally laugh or smile or cry or be worried or feel concerned about the way things are going or whatever, like find something else, man. You know, like there's plenty of media out there to watch, and tabletop stuff is just another form of that same media phenomenon of like I want to you know, connect with and have feelings about these characters and people, right? It's the same as acting. It's the same as producing like movie stuff. It's just like a little more immediate.
Yeah, that's true. Sorry to like divert the stream away.
No, it's all good, and like I'm happy to talk about this stuff. I think that a lot of people get their feelings tied up in like what responses to things are.
Yeah.
I like to try and remember that a response means that they cared enough to type a thing.
Yeah.
Which I mean, like whether you agree with it or not is entirely up to you, right?
Very often when I get into a conversation like this, I don't have a like this is bad or this is good kind of stance. I just enjoy talking about it. So you know, it's more like an exploration of the idea.
But I think if we don't have a conclusion, the conversation is just viewers do things. You know what I mean? Like, and that's like, yes, they definitely do things. You know, like
that's true. I just find that conversation interesting to explore. I like very often, and this may be a disconnect between how you like to talk about things, how I like to talk about things, but I in general I won't engage with the topic and be like this is good, this is bad. It tends to be like this is interesting. And just exploring like why people do things. I
think that is a difference of privilege, Sheepy. I don't want to get into it too hard, but I have to have opinions about stuff.
Oh no, absolutely. Like,
I can't just observe things and say this is interesting.
That's probably because I am also severely disconnected. Again, probably part of privilege. But I'm severely disconnected from anything like political and social and cultural and etc. I've kind of like
I mean, and that is and walling yourself off from that stuff is indeed a privileged position to be in.
Yeah, definitely.
Because like people like me, we can't ignore that stuff, right? Like if we ignore it, then the people who don't ignore it, who are Nazis, get what they want, and we don't like that. So I don't want to get too deep into that stuff.
No, that's fair.
It's not really what I want to talk about. But yeah, we have different ways of engaging with topics because it is about a conclusion. And, you know what I mean, or like an opinion in the end. Like it's not just like kind of this is what it is. You know what I mean?
I find that my way of like looking at things and discussing things can very often lead to misunderstandings and disconnect. So I try my best to not, you know, like.
Oh, and I'm not like accusing you of anything.
No,
you know what I mean? I'm just in the way that like, in the way that I am like a talk show guest. I'm just like, what is our goal here?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, what are we talking about?
That's fair. That's fair. Essentially, I went off on my own little personal enjoyment of exploring a subject, which you know is is a habit I try not to do when I do the Bar Brawl, but occasionally I fall to because we are all only human.
Well, like you don't want to sit here and just like listen the whole time. You want to talk to, like, it's a discussion.
Honestly,
it's a discussion, you know.
I've been enjoying listening, to be honest. Like you've had a really cool long time doing shows, and
oh my god,
like you're doing like LARP and all this stuff that I have no experience with. So I've been enjoying like listening.
I've got a LARP story for you.
Oh yeah.
So when I first joined the LARP like scene here in Edmonton, I live in Edmonton, Alberta, for anybody who wants to know, up in Canada. When I first joined the LARP scene here in Edmonton, I played like a healer high elf, basically, like at the local LARP, which is Underworld LARP. You can look it up on the internet, Underworld LARP. The rules are all up there if you want to check it out. And these LARPs are sort of a franchise thing where like they have like franchises across the country where like the central like one is in Toronto, and then there's like a bunch of franchises. And I went to the Edmonton franchise, and I played like a high elf healer, and that was my first character. Her name was Kira, and she was my first character. And there was an event very early on in her life where she was at a tournament, like a grand tournament, and these like knights and stuff who are like, you know, level 13, 14. I'm like level 2, you know, are in combat doing things, and you know, winning tokens and favors and like getting rewards and what have you. And eventually at the end, I'd done a lot of gambling on like who was going to win and what have you. And I'd picked the right people and just like generally made quite a lot of coin for a level 2 character.
Yeah.
At the end, there was like a staking of all your tokens. And the person who like won the gamble at the end would get a reward. So of course I like was like, well, I want the reward. I want to be able to ask a favor from like that Fae over there, you know, like and stuff. So I'm gonna put all my tokens in, and it came down to 3 people. It was me, this like Catman rogue, and this like Knights Templar guy. You know what I mean? Like in terms of the characterization. And I was up against this like Catman rogue in this like gambling thing, and we said like, all right, well we could like pussyfoot around this, but instead, let's just both go all in so that one of us wins so the other guy can't win because we hate him. He's like this angry Knights Templar. He's like this angry Knights Templar guy, and if one of us wins with the other one's pot, then we'll win and he'll lose. And the important thing is that he loses, you know, and like down the line, one of us will do favors for the other, you know, like if we win or whatever. But like, let's just go all in here. And so we both went all in. We rolled some dice, and I came out ahead, and I won like the favor of you know, like a master craftsman at level 2, which is just silly. And I asked for a staff that could heal people by hitting them. I wanted like a healing staff.
Yeah,
that was what I wanted. And they said, okay, well, you know, we'll look into it. And eventually, I got a staff that was like once a day you could activate it for 10 minutes for it to swing for 1 healing. So if you touch someone with it, it would heal them 1 point, right?
For some reason, that makes me think of Jane's rain stick in Firefly.
I don't know, but it turned into this like big thing because like every big fight, I would just activate it and stand behind the like fighter line and like tap everyone on the shoulders as we were going. You know, people would fall over and I'd poke them and they'd get up and they'd get hit again and fall over and I'd poke them and they'd get up. You know, and it's just like it's very silly. That sounds
like a lot of fun visually. To watch.
The dumbest thing that ever happened was somebody wanted to go on an undead hunt. There's like some undead ghost or something like out there that we wanted to hunt. And I'm like, well, I can activate my staff. I can do healing damage, and healing hurts the undead, so I'll come with you. You know, like to like do lots of damage to this undead.
Yeah.
And so we went out into the woods. It was snowy. It was cold, like, you know, winter in Canada. And we found this NPC, and I'm like, haha, I activate my staff, and I run in, and they go like, they hit me with like a frenzy or something, you know, like I went berserk, like some mind-affecting magic or something. So I turned around on my friends and just like went nuts on them, but the staff was active, so I was just healing them. I'm like, full out of control berserk attacking my like friend group, but the staff doesn't do any damage, it just heals people. So it was like they were just letting me fucking tire myself out exhausted, swinging this goddamn healing stick into them to like no effect, basically. Eventually somebody took pity on me and just like knocked me out so I could like stop. But it was so fun. Everybody's laughing so fucking hard. Yeah, it was one of those like moment that couldn't have happened without specific triggers sort of thing. But that was I just went on a tangent.
No,
the real key here was that when I first joined the LARP community, I played a character who personality-wise was basically just me. You know what I mean? Like, and I highly recommend that nobody ever do that at a LARP, because that is the easiest way to bleed. The easiest. Because if somebody says, "Oh, Kira, I hate that girl. She's a coward," or like, "I hate her because she's stingy," or like, "I just don't like her face," or whatever, right? If she's the same as me, then those insults cut deep, right? Like right to the me of me. Whereas if you play something sort of like personality devoid of your own, or like deviated of your own, when you get insulted, it's not as big of a deal, right? Or when like you hear stuff that's like, "Oh, that character is like a horrid murderer," or whatever, like you don't feel as bad about it.
Unless you are a horrid murderer, but that
well,
goes.
I mean,
that goes
sure.
along with the don't play, yourself.
The other thing that LARP really super taught me was that like you can play outside type and make it work. Like, you've never met me in real life, Sheepy, but I'm like 5'6". I am skinny. I am trans lady. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not intimidating really in any way. Like in person, at least I didn't think I was. But I played a game called Dystopia Rising, which is a post-apocalyptic LARP, like a Fallout style LARP. And I decided to play a character who was a member of the Raven Tribe, and the Raven Tribe are like survivalist naturalists, basically, like, like bows and arrows and living out in the wastes and hunting zombies and that kind of thing, and at that game, I was the strongest fighter. There was no character with any stats better for fighting than me. I had like a two-handed sword and bad attitude. You know what I mean? Like, and that was my deal. And the roleplay was that I would ask anybody who talked to me, I would ask them how many Zeds they've killed, how many zombies have you killed, and if their answer was like anything but a high number, I just didn't care what they had to say about anything. You know what I mean? Like the roleplay was just like, if you haven't killed zombies, then you don't matter. So like this guy who's like got a bowler hat and some round glasses and like very very like vest fancy, trying to set up the like leadership of this town, comes up to me. He's like, are you gonna help us with the town or whatever? Like, you're gonna like, we need you to go out and like deal with these monsters or what have you. And so I make the choice, and I check with the player, obviously, because you don't physically touch a player like or manhandle them in any way until you like know that's okay. Yeah. I made the choice to like grab him by the lapel, and like push him into a wall because he's like talking to me with authority, So we like push him back into a wall, and I'm like, "How many Zeds you killed?" And he's like, none. Like net 0. Yeah. And I let him go, and I said, like, I should be in charge. You're like, I've killed the most. Like, you do what I say. And he's like, yeah, okay. Sure, I'll do whatever you say. And it was at that moment that I realized, wait a second. Was I just intimidating? Did I just intimidate someone into doing what I want with, like, just my words and a little bit of, like, elbow grease? Yeah. Out of that spawned like the character I played for 4 years in Underworld, Aaron, the like wild elf witch, because the idea was just neutral expression, stare down, like flat voiced anger, like whenever she was like upset. And I never thought like I would never have tried it at a table, because at a table I know I can play a 6-foot tall Amazonian badass. You know what I mean? And like, yes, I can be intimidating at a Dungeons and Dragons game. That's a given. I roll intimidation. I'm intimidating. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like at the LARP, there's no social skills. There's no roll persuasion. There's no roll intimidation. You know, you either can do it and act it and be intimidating or persuasive, or not. You know, and like learning that it was possible for me to like flex those like social muscles in ways that I hadn't expected, in a safe place where I could explore those options, you know, without feeling unsafe. Was super, super cool and very fun, and something that I really appreciate having learned that I can do. You know, like when I give you the death stare, you know, after game people come up to me and they're like, gosh, like I could feel my hands shaking, or like, you know, like I had the fucking goosebumps, the heebie-jeebies, like you just staring at me across the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was always so great. Like just these skills that you don't know you have, kind of thing, that you can like get through acting.
Yeah. Oh, well, so I have a couple of like not really exactly follow-up questions. They're like tangentially related to what you were saying.
Shoot.
So, you said you're in Canada. I assume you are Canadian then.
I am actually Australian.
Oh.
But I moved to Canada when I was 11.
Oh,
my
okay.
passport is still Australian, but
cool.
You know, yeah.
So that's taken me off on an entirely different. But I won't divert even further. So my question is essentially like, from what I know, there is some kind of LARP. I don't know much about it, so feel free to completely correct me. But there's some kind of LARP in the US, and as far as I know, there's not much in the UK, as far as I'm aware. But
there's a bunch in the UK, but it's stuff like Empire and like larger scale, sort of like fantasy battle LARPs.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay. I was just wondering if it's more prevalent in Canada than in the US, because I could kind of see that. I don't know why, but that was just my thought and my question.
Sorry, could you repeat, Sheepy? I got somebody on Facebook messaging me there
no
for
problem.
a second.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because like my experience with the UK is that the LARP is not as big a thing and it's not as accepted. It sounds like reasonably accepted in Canada. I was wondering if like it's more accepted there than.
I think the thing about LARP is there are different styles of LARP. There's like a European sort of like Norwegian quote unquote like style LARP, which is a little more freeform, and then the US style LARPs tend to be like rules heavy. So it's like playing Pathfinder versus playing like Dungeon World or whatever.
Okay.
And like a LARP can be anything. Like there are all shapes and sizes of LARPs. Like any game that is live action role playing is a LARP, you know. Vampire LARPs are a thing. They're everywhere. They're in every city. Like in the US, you can find a vampire LARP, like Vampire the Masquerade if you want. Pretty much.
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, it's fun, but it's a little less my style of thing. It's very PvP kind of oriented.
I couldn't see that as
there's so the stuff that I do is like Western LARP, and then Nordic LARP would be like the more freeform stuff. The stuff that I do has like codified rules and stats and stuff like that.
Okay. I hate to ask additionally, but just purely because I'm very ignorant on the subject, how similar is it to God, what's that film that was like mainstream film?
There are a bunch of films that have LARP depicted in them, and in none of them is it any kind of similar. It's always played for laughs, and LARP is not always played for laughs.
I personally felt, but as I said, ignorance, so probably very wrong. I felt that they paid it some respect. Role models was what it was.
I've never seen it ever.
Then we can't really say. But,
no, I guess I can't. But I would say that like most depictions of LARP are in the same vein that most depictions of D&D players are. You know what I mean? Like it's about that true.
Okay. Okay. Well, that's good to know. I won't make any assumptions then based on what I've seen
yeah, I wouldn't.
Yeah. Sorry,
But
carry on.
yeah, the other thing is like LARPs sort of fall into different categories of like action. So like
Yeah.
the LARP that I play, Underworld, is a boffer LARP, which means that you hit people with foam weapons. You know what
Okay.
I mean? Like there is combat, and that combat is a physical combat. It's light. It's like lightest touch physical combat, but it is physical combat.
Mm.
And it's like swinging fake axes and swords and blocking with shields and spears and what have you, like at each other, and throwing, like spells in the form of like incants and birdseed packets and stuff. Like these are like things that we do
Okay.
in a bar for LARP. Whereas like Vampire the Masquerade is a like a deck of cards based kind of like rolling dice LARP.
Oh, okay, okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, in role models they have like the foam things and the spell bags and stuff. Again, not making assumptions, just saying like
Sure. I mean, like, and that stuff is like correct.
Yeah.
But I would say the important part of like LARP stuff for me is not the mechanical portions. If you want to check that out, like I said, Underworld LARP. If you Google it, you can find the rule book for the game I play.
And they do
but
have things like historical reenactments, which are not so much the role playing; it's more just the actiony, type things. So.
sure, yeah. I mean, like that's another section of the hobby entirely, right? Like it's a different thing completely.
Oh yeah, totally.
But yeah, I mean, if you want to hear more of the like random stories from my times playing these games, I always upload after I go to a game. The Monday after, I always upload a like video of like what I did that weekend, a story time about the LARP that I was at, or like what my character got up to, like these like little journals.
Is there a playlist for that I can?
There's not a playlist, I don't think, but
Okay.
they're on my YouTube channel.
All right. In that case, I'll when I do the description, I'll find like one and basically say to people like, go look for the others.
Yeah, you're welcome to. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
it's fine. And like sometimes they're, depending on how much you know about it, it'll be more or less useful. You know what I mean?
Is it possible to be like essentially like I guess like a crowd member? Just like if you're not confident enough to go and LARP, can you like go and see what it's about and kind of watch?
Not really, but you
that's a shame.
you can make a character for, well, at the LARP that I go to anyway.
Oh yeah.
You can make a character and try it out for your first game is always free. So if you just make like Sheepy the Fighter or whatever and like go and experience it from like a little bit of a sideline experience, see how you feel about it. You know what I mean? Like that.
Yeah.
That's up to you to like be on the sideline or not.
I guess it could be weird for the people playing.
Yeah.
To be like.
Yeah. People don't want people just like watching
Like
them.
looky,
You know what I mean? Like
looky Lou's being like,
it's the same thing as like, yeah, if someone standing over your shoulder while you write a novel or something. It's just like a little bit weird. But if you're part of the if you're part of the world, then it's fine. You sign up for your first game. First game's free. And the other thing that's cool about your first game is none of your deaths count. So if you die, it does not go towards your death record, which would make you eventually die forever. You know what I mean? So like on your first game, you get to experience being like as reckless as you want, basically, because you can't lose your stuff or die or die in a way that is permanent. Like it is like a feel free to adventure.
It's like a trial run.
Yeah, and you can like let loose. You don't know the rules exactly right, but you can like kind of have a go at it.
Oh, that's cool. I was just thinking that like after you said about like kind of looky loos and stuff, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But I was thinking like I could see a lot of people being interested but not confident enough to just kind of.
I feel like you're conflating LARP with medieval times a little bit. You know what I mean? Like it's like a personal thing. I mean, there are kind of up to 100 players, and like nobody is the main character, and it doesn't work exactly like a D&D game. Like the way I've always explained it is that like the LARP games that I play feel like D&D in reverse, where you're a member of a town and stuff happens to that town. You know what I mean? And like you are in that town and things are going on there, you know, and rather than like you're an adventurer and you adventure around going to towns and doing stuff,
Yeah.
you know, it just like feels a little bit like the opposite.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
How are you doing for time? Because I know you said it was like there's like 2.5,
I got another
3 hours.
yeah, I got another like, you know, 10 or 15 minutes basically, probably.
Yeah. I just wanted to check in on that because I may or may not have ordered some dinner. Because the place I ordered from was about to close, and I was like, I should get my order in before it closes.
Yeah, hell yeah, get some dinner. I mean, we can wrap it up when well, you know, in the next little bit, whenever you like.
I mean, I was just gonna kind of do the summary outro stuff essentially, and be like,
yeah,
you know,
sure.
Is there anything? Oh, okay. DistractedElf LARP. I'll grab that one if you don't mind to do.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll take a look at which one it is.
It's Zenith.
Oh, it's the Zenith November 2019. Yeah, all right, cool.
Okay,
Yeah,
that'll be the one I use in the description. So yeah, essentially, this is pretty much what the Bar Brawl is about. Just getting you to talk about your stuff, whatever you want to talk about, and
yeah,
I love, one of the things I love is hearing people talk about their characters and their experiences, because like everyone enjoys what they've been through, you know, like invariably.
There's a lot of deep, grimy roleplay I wish I could get into, but
Yeah.
the space isn't really for that at the moment, streaming wise.
Yeah,
I tend to find that on my own.
That's fair. I think like I think it's I guess I wanted to originally the Bar Brawl started as like hey, let's have an exit interview for my cast members and talk about all the things they're doing because they've been on my show, and I want to big them up. And then I realized, like, one of the things I love doing is talking about my characters and my experiences and just, you know, really getting into it for a couple of hours. And so I was like, fuck it, let's do that as a show and just bring people on so they can talk about all their stuff, and I can send people to go find new like shows they wouldn't find otherwise.
Yeah.
So if there's anything else that you'd like to kind of like big up or you know, point people towards.
I mean, my current projects are that we're playing Candlekeep Mysteries on D&D's channel at 1 p.m. PST on Mondays. And I'm currently running Desperate Gamble, a Star Wars campaign, over on my channel at on Fridays at 1 p.m. PST.
Okay. Do you have any like things you can talk about that are in the works, or
nothing currently. Things are still fine as they are, and I've got nothing I can announce. No.
Fair enough. It's very often the case, but I always feel like it's worth asking.
Oh right, Jeevesy mentioned it, but we've been doing some writing, and on the DMs Guild I have a published what do you call it, a little splat book called The Distracted Elf's Guide to Otherworldly Patrons.
Is that Warlock stuff?
Yeah, it's Warlock stuff, but it's mostly like role-playing Warlock stuff. So it's like, if you're a Warlock and you're like, I'm a Warlock of the Fiend, but you don't know what Fiend, this book can help you like, maybe pick a role-playing section for your like what Fiend, or you know, I am a Warlock of the Great Old One, but like what Great Old One do you want to characterize them a little bit more? You can, you know.
Oh, okay, that's really cool because like I haven't had that much experience with D&D. But what I have, there are instances where they're like, you have a god, and I'm like, cool. Who are the gods, and what do they do? And then it's like, there's this god, and then no.
We basically just wrote a bunch of specific patrons to fit into the like categories that already existed.
Yeah, and
so it's like 16 pages, 2 patrons per category. It's pay what you want, so check it out. You know, and download it. We're currently working on a bunch of spells and magic items to go with it for our next release. But I've been dragging my heels on it and just trying to like work through it a little bit.
Link in the description. I'll need a link.
Yeah.
I don't have a link to that
Yeah.
yet.
The Distracted Elf's Guide to Otherworldly Patrons on the DM's Guild. I'll get a link for you.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, there you go. That is DistractedElf.
That's me.
Someone with so much TTRPG experience and shows and LARPing and everything that we didn't get to get to a tier list this time because we're enjoying talking too much.
I am a crusty ancient nerd from the before times, and I will be here well after some newer nerds are gone.
Lovely.
Yeah, I don't know. That's pretty much all I can say about that.
No, that's good. That's good. So thanks for watching, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the stream. Hope you enjoyed the video if you're watching on YouTube. At this point in the video is the time to go down to the description and check out all of DistractedElf's links. Long may she reign.
I don't know about rain, but I'm certainly alive.
And that's the best we could ask for in these days. In the dark times.
It's been great being on. It's been great chatting, Sheepy. Let's do it again sometime.
Yeah. I'm always down for having people on again, and I feel like in the future we will talk once I get my shit together and organize the Friday show stuff.
I mean, it sounds like it. Yeah.
Don't hold your breath, as you said, but if it happens.
Listen, I got my fingers crossed. It's
okay.
You know.
So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll see you in the next one.